All right, what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? I'm gonna hear echo. Hold up. Let me make sure. All right, what's going on? There it goes. Just wanted to make sure that there was sound and everything. Make sure it sounds good. I like that background. That's pretty cool. But I think I'm gonna turn it up because it's making lag. There it goes. Now it's running smooth again. How's everybody doing? This is the first time I've actually. There we go. Let's see how that looks. So I'm actually gonna turn that off for now. What's up, everybody? How y'all doing tonight? It is your boy Young Queasy. We are back at it again with another live stream. Today we are going to be talking about some awesome stuff. I'm going to go ahead and close some of this. All right. Killer B, feeling groovy. I like it. Whoa, look at that. Look at that misspelled. Y'all see that? Y'all can't see my mouse. Spoiler Reeves. Let me edit that real fast. I can't have that. Specifically on, I think that's Twitch. Yep. Let me add that W in there. There we go. So I have YouTube right here in front of me. It's been a long time since I went live on YouTube. So I don't know what it's going to do. I'm actually live on Twitter as well. It looks better on Twitter. And then Twitch, for some reason, isn't pulling up. I mean, oh, there it is. All right. And then Twitch looks the best. All right. Either way. So I hope everybody has had a fantastic week. I know on the channel we've had a great week. You know, Monday we had a huge, episode just doing a rewrite of the DCEU. I believe that was Monday. And then Tuesday did a complete ranking. I think it was Tuesday. Did a complete ranking of all the Batman movies. And it was a ranking / review because I went through, I talked about the movie, what I liked, what I didn't like. And so I think that was Tuesday. My days are kind of a little mixed up on, what happened at what time. But for the most part, it happened this week. We had a huge DC week talking about that. We ranked the Batman movies as well as the Batman actors and the suits, all of it. So it's been Batman centric leading up to Matt Reeves The Batman, which I saw on Thursday night. And we're going to talk about it here tonight. I have been sitting on my thoughts for this movie since Thursday night, and originally was going to do a review Thursday night, and I said, you know what, no, I want to watch it again so I can, for one, so I can, really, get a grasp, because 3 hours is a lot of content to remember accurately. So I wanted to get a rewatch so I could go back over and, cement some of the things that I already knew, as well as maybe catch some things that I missed the first time. So that was the goal. So I did. I went and watched it Friday night, last night. And then originally my plan was I was going to watch it in the afternoon and then do my stream last night. Ended up going last night and not getting out of the movie till after 1 o'clock. So when I got home, I was like, I'm not going to do the stream tonight. I'll do it Saturday night. So here we are. It's Saturday night. We've talked Batman all week long, leading up to today, where we are going to talk about the new Matt Reeves Batman 2022. Did I like it? Did I hate it? Am I somewhere in between? I don't know. Let's talk about it. And actually, I do know. I'm just going to be upfront with y'all when I say, because I don't want to beat around the bush about my thoughts. If anyone follows me on Twitter, for those of you who might be watching on Twitter, you already know how I feel about this movie. Because actually, another thing that I just did was joined Letterboxd, which I've seen other people talk about Letterboxd, and I got curious and I said, you know what, I'll check it out and see what it's about. And I hopped on there, and it's actually really cool. So I joined Letterboxd, and I started Thursday night, and I haven't finished yet, but I started and I compiled my list of how I felt about the Batman. And actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and get that pulled up here. So let me do that. Screenshots. There we are. So my Twitter followers have already seen this. All my Twitter people. So I'm just going to email it to myself so I can just pop it up on the computer. Let's see. And then when that gets here, I'll just open it up and I'll screen share it right here so y'all can see, because I made my own ranking on Letterboxd and got to I thought that was kind of cool, because not only I did the ranking, I put the movies in order, and then I started going through in each individual movie. I started writing out my reviews for them, which was cool. I've never actually got to do something like that, so this allowed me to flesh my thoughts out in writing form, which I'm a lot better at than I am when it comes to talking, because when I'm talking, I get my words tied and my thoughts jumble up and they skip over each other, and so and I always leave something out, whereas when I'm writing it out, it allows me to keep track of my thought better. Let's see if this email's yet. I get some weird emails. There we go. As soon as this pulls up, I'll screen share it, and then y'all can see. So everyone else can see what my Twitter people already got to see. Now, again, too, and this is what I posted on when I posted this picture, I went ahead and I put it with the caption. I said, for anybody who missed my live streams, check those out when you see this ranking, because my ranking is different from what you're going to see, and a lot of people might not understand the reasoning for why I ranked them the way I ranked them. And so I encourage everybody, and I'm encouraging all of you right now, if you see this and you go, wait, whoa, he put that there. I'm not sure if it was Monday or Tuesday. One of them, you'll see it in the title. It should say Batman ranking or whatever. Check that out. It's where I flesh out all my thoughts. I give my reasoning for why certain things are there. I'll go over it real quick again today. So let me screen share this. There we are. So actually, I'll just full screen this. Okay. Let me zoom in here. Well, that didn't do anything. So this is my Letterboxd, obviously, Batman ranking. Here's my personal ranking for the 9 Batman movies to date, including the new one. And here we are, starting at 1. This is the worst. This is the best. Obviously, my list is a lot different than what you're going to see other people, do their list as. So, obviously, you see Batman Forever is at the bottom, and I gave my reasoning for that. I don't think it's the worst Batman movie. It's my least favorite to watch. All because of this guy right here. For those of you who can see where my mouse is at, makes perfect sense. I am not a Jim Carrey fan, and he is solely the reason for my dislike of Batman Forever. I love everything to do with Batman in these movies. Let me switch to this one so I'm still on screen so y'all can actually see me talking. Let me do this. Here we go. Hey! All right. So, yeah. Um, yeah, so Batman Forever is at the bottom, even though I don't think it's the worst. Obviously, everyone pretty much universally agrees this is probably one of the worst movies made. But I get more enjoyment out of watching this one here than I do out of watching this one here. And it's because even in the very, very, very bad writing and directing and acting and everything, every single element of Batman and Robin is bad. I find more enjoyment out of the campiness of Mr. Freeze and George Clooney's Batman and Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy. I find more enjoyment watching the corny campiness of that than I do out of watching the very obnoxious Jim Carrey. If Jim Carrey wasn't in this movie, this one would pop away. It would actually probably even be above Batman Returns, in all honesty, because I think Val Kilmer's Batman is great. I think all of the things surrounding, his story and his story arc in that film, especially, with the rumors of the Schumacher cut and what, we hear is actually in his movie. I think Batman Forever had the potential to be a great, great Batman movie. It all brought down by the Riddler for me. I do not like Jim Carrey's Riddler at all. Then obviously Batman Returns. Again, I think it's a fun movie. Michael Keaton's a great, Batman. Michelle Pfeiffer was a great Catwoman. I think Danny DeVito is weird. Their take on the Penguin's weird. I think Christopher Walken is kind of funny, and fun to see him in this type of role. The score is obviously great again. It's just both of these, Batman 9 and Batman Returns, neither one of them have very much in the plot department. There's not much going on in plot. Obviously you have the main plot of Batman Returns, to sum it right now, is the Penguin teams up with, what's his name, Max Schreck, to take Batman down. Batman 89, what's the plot? Stop the Joker. There's nothing plot-wise between these movies here. There's so much more plot in the Schumacher movie, but it's just that the execution of the Schumacher movies is not on the level of Tim Burton's execution. So that's the reason these are here. I think I enjoy every single one of the movies on this list, save for the Jim Carrey scenes, which is the only scenes in any Batman property that I really can't stand. That is. The Nolan trilogy, if you would have asked me a year ago, where I put the Nolan trilogy, it's number one. Dark Knight Rise, I've always been somebody, I go back, all of these movies from, I'd say Batman Begins. All of these movies, the top four, can swap, I say the top three, swap by the day. And actually, Batman Begins some days too, because some days, if I've, come off of watching The Dark Knight, it's my favorite. If I watch Batman Begins, it's my favorite. Batman v Superman, it's my favorite. The Dark Knight Rises, it's my favorite. They're so interchangeable. It is so paper thin difference between those. That made this list. This is how I felt. This is how I felt. And tomorrow, if I was to make this list again, I could probably shuffle some around. Right now, I'm kind of still agreeing with where I put it, but I just made this list. It's subject to change because I love all of these movies. From Batman Begins and up, every one of them are fantastic movies that I love. They're probably all five of them are in my top 50, top 20 movies of all time. Top 50 movies of all time. Just Batman Begins, I think is the better Batman movie. It's the second Batman movie on this list. Talking just strictly Batman. I think performances in the whole Nolan trilogy is fantastic. The score is fantastic. The cinematography is awesome. The effects are awesome. The directing is great. You know, the way it's cut and the way the camera moves and everything, all of it's great. The act leaves a little to be desired, and I think it gets better as it goes along. So Batman Begins, I think, worse. Dark Knight got a little. I think Rises got slight. I think it got better and it got worse in terms of action and choreography and stuff. But as far as my personal enjoyment, that's how those go. Batman v Superman, I talked about it on here. I'll go over it very quickly because I've already talked this week. Cutting out on what? Yeah, it is. Let me see. Let me go. For wondering what I was answering, the voice is cutting. If I start getting more comments, I'm just gonna pop up, let the chat be on the side. It is cutting out. I don't like that. Okay, y'all seen what it is. I'm gonna close this. I think it's what's causing. We're gonna do this. Okay, let's see. Hello, hello, hello. Is it still? How is my voice still sounding? I'm just going to talk for a bit. Sounds a little bit better. Yeah, it was doing like this weird little crackle thing. I don't know what the deal was with that. It's still doing it. Oh well. I haven't streamed from this program in a long time, so okay, it sounds a lot better. So y'all probably getting all kinds of echo from that. Anyways, what I was saying. So y'all saw on the list. You know, I think, you know, when it comes to Batman v Superman at second place, if it wasn't for the Doomsday stuff at the end, Batman v Superman would be my favorite. Batman be one of my favorite DC movies of all time. I'm very much in the minority, but I stand by that very firmly. And the more I watch it, I just watched it again this week. Every time I watch it, it gets better for me. And, you know, the first half of the movie, I think, is the best DC we've ever gotten. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. Everything about it is flawless to me. Then you get some iffy stuff in it's just the program I'm using. It's weird. I think it's because I'm going to YouTube as well. YouTube probably looks the worst. It usually does. Right now, if I wonder what I'm doing, I'm looking at all the lives. I don't know why, but YouTube always has like this really washed out look. But I'm watching my Twitch, so if it's glitching on any of the others, just let me know. I'll see what I can do about it. There may be nothing I can do, you know, because you'll go into 3 different things. I may actually end up taking Twitter's off of there. Anyways, so yeah, hold on, let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to do this. Okay, so it's not going to do it right now. Okay, so I'm going to just have to finish it like this one, and then the next time I'll know in advance. Okay. But anyways, yeah, if you took Doomsday out, in my opinion, I think the movie would be my favorite DC. Like I said, the first half I think is pretty much flawless, and then the second half, I wish I would have. You cut Doomsday out, cut Wonder Woman's appearance out. You can still have her as Diana, where you see her lurking around, and you can see she's kind of into, trying to figure out Lex, what he's up to as well. But that's all you see of her. You don't see Wonder Woman. Cut Doomsday out, and then the Justice League stuff out. Don't have Superman die at the end. You have them fight for, extend their fight between the two of them a little bit. Have the Martha scene because it doesn't bother me. And then Batman's like, Martha doesn't die tonight. He does warehouse scene. Superman goes, talks to Lex. Lex gets arrested. Batman visits him in Arkham. That's the end. That's how I would have done it. And if that's how it would have gone, Batman v Superman would probably be my favorite DC movie. But as it stands, as you saw on the list, The Batman 2022, the newest installment for the Caped Crusader, is my favorite. And I'm one of those people, I don't like doing that for new movies. I don't like leaving a movie and automatically going, oh, that's my favorite of that. I don't like doing that because it feels hyperbolic, and you're running on the adrenaline of what you just watched and everything, and so it can kind of skewer your opinion on it. So I said no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go live and say, oh, the Batman, this is my favorite Batman movie of all time after I just watched it. So I said, okay, I want to watch it again and see if all the things that I watched still hold up. So I'm going to watch it again. And then afterwards, I'm going to think about how I felt about it, and then we'll go from there. So I did. I watched it Thursday night, and then I came and went and watched it again last night and thought about it today. Listened to other people's thoughts, listened to other people's reviews today. A lot of wild reviews. Some of my favorite reviewers hated the movie, and they're really ragging it. Some of my favorite reviewers absolutely loved the movie. So it's very polarizing. A lot of people on a lot of different sides. For me, I loved this movie. I thought everything that they did was perfect. Years ago, me and my brother used to do a lot of fan writes. I hate to call them fan fictions because when you say that, it automatically puts you in a weird category. But it is what it is. Me and my brother used to write kind of our own fan fictions. We wrote our version of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. After Force Awakens come out, we said, what would we have done? Because I hated Force Awakens, and he did too. So we said, what would we have done different that would have been our version, but would have been also something that I think Star Wars fans would have enjoyed. So we wrote our version of that. And, maybe, when we get when Star Wars content starts to ramp back up, maybe that'll be a video that we do, and we can talk about kind of our fan rights of the sequel trilogy. So we did that. We wrote a couple others, as well as just writing our own movies and stuff, but we did that. But, amongst all the other things that we wrote, a Batman trilogy is something that I wrote. And I talked with him, and we threw ideas back and forth, and we come to a conclusion on some of the things that we landed on with what it would be. And I really sat down and I fleshed it out. And what my vision of this was before Matt Reeves was even announced. This was back when they were still talking about, Ben Affleck, is in talks for directing his own Batman movie. This is how early on this was. They hadn't even confirmed Ben Affleck's movie yet. Obviously, then we know that got canned and Matt Reeves was brought in. So, but this was before any of that. So I said, what would I do? And so I wrote, and I come up with a trilogy for how I would have done, my Batman movies. And it was a lot like like what you see with Matt Reeves. I didn't have the Riddler for the first movie. My idea was to have a Court of Owls movie to kick off my trilogy. But it was very much like what you saw with Matt Reeves. It was very dark. It was long. It was very detective oriented. You know, it was a mystery. You know, he was trying to get to the bottom of the Court of Owls. You know, that was kind of my idea for a movie. And I don't remember all the details. I'd have to go find where I actually wrote it all out and everything. But just going off the top of my head, that's what it was. And then the next movie was going to be a Harvey Dent, Two-Face, and Riddler. And then it was going to end with my third movie of the trilogy was going to end with, you know, Batman gets taken to Arkham, and he's locked in Arkham by the Joker's design, and the Joker would be the mastermind of the third movie. He's locked in Arkham with a lot of his rogues gallery, and it's very much kind of like Arkham Asylum. Again, I don't remember all of the details of it, but that's kind of the gist of what it was going for. So when I heard about this movie and everything, I was like, okay, you know, a lot of the things, you know, he's saying is good. You know, I'm not as familiar with Matt Reeves. You know, I had never watched any of the Planet of the Apes movies. Of course, Cloverfield was something I was familiar with. Let Me In was something I was familiar with, but I never watched Planet of the Apes. So I was kind of, you know, I knew of Matt Reeves, but I didn't really know anything about his style or everything. And I just knew him as a horror director, Cloverfield and Let Me In. So I was like, okay, you know, I want to see a Batman horror movie. So this is in the step in the right direction. Then they cast Robert Pattinson. And it seemed like one of the few at the very beginning who said, okay, this could be cool. Because I had just watched, you know, obviously he had movies like Good Time and everything like that. And then you had The Lighthouse, The Devil All the Time, and all these fantastic movies that were coming out where he was just knocking it out of the park every time. And he was consistent. And then Tenet had it, and he was my favorite part of Tenet. I said, okay, I like this guy. And obviously Tenet was 2020. And I was like, I really like this guy. I think he's going to be a really, really good Batman. And I was excited. And obviously, you know, I was cautiously optimistic, I'll say, because I wasn't 100% sold on the Batman side. I thought he was going to nail Bruce Wayne. But I was thinking, I'm positive, you know, I'm optimistic for his Batman. You know, I think, you know, there's some things I'd like to see him do beforehand, you know, obviously bulk up a little bit, obviously do a little here and there, you know, just to prepare for the role. But for the most part, I'm excited for his version of Batman. And then they released that teaser trailer. And I think it was the first Fandom that they released the teaser trailer at. And I didn't watch it at first. I wasn't planning on watching it because at that point, I'm pretty sure the movie was announced. Oh, when was it? I think it was maybe October was when they were announcing it for. So I said, I'm not going to watch anything on it. That's close enough that I can get by without watching anything on it. So at first I ignored the teaser, and then they announced it was delayed. So I was like, well, it's delayed. I'm going to go ahead and watch the teaser and see what they had in store, because it's going to be a lot longer before I, you know, get to see the movie. And when I watched the teaser trailer, I was like, this is going to be this. And I remember looking at my brother, and obviously the Dark Knight trilogy is very high up on a pedestal for me. I love that trilogy. Like I said, they're all neck and neck for being my favorite. Obviously, Rises right now is my favorite. Bane has always been my favorite of the villains. But then, like I said, then tomorrow it could be The Dark Knight. Then a week from now it could be Batman Begins. So it changes. But to beat that trilogy for me is a high, high bar. And that's originally why I hated BVS so much. Was because I felt like it was a departure from the Nolan trilogy so much, and I was very stubborn, I was very close-minded. And then when I watched it again with fresh eyes, then I said, oh wow, this movie's fantastic. And obviously right now I have it as in second place as being my favorite as far as rewatchability right now. And so the bar was very high, but I looked at my brother and I said, if they stick this landing, if they nail everything that they're going for in this teaser trailer, and what I've heard Matt Reeves talk about. And I listened, to the interviews and stuff with Matt Reeves, where he's at Fandom and he's standing on that really cool looking stage and he's just talking about his idea. When I heard that, I said, if they nail what they're going for, this movie has the potential to be my favorite Batman movie. And fast forward 2 years, they nailed everything they were going for, and it very much is my favorite Batman movie. I loved this movie, start to finish. The performances, the set pieces, the action, the score, the tone of the movie, everything was on point. And it felt like, because I loved the Arkham games. I've played the Arkham games 1,000 times. I'm currently in the middle of my replay of Arkham City. I love the graphic novels. I listen to the audio, dramatization of them, I guess you could say, of the graphic novels all the time. I was just listening to one today. This movie felt like an audio graphic novel, an audio and video. It felt like they took the graphic novel and threw it into video form, and that's what I was watching. And I love that. I have been wanting that from a Batman movie for so long. Nolan's trilogy, I love those movies. Some of my favorite movies of all time. Batman vs. Superman is probably my favorite. It is my favorite of the DCEU, and it's one of my favorite DC movies of all time. But none of them captured the feel of the graphic novels quite right. They had elements of them. There's elements of Nightfall and Dark Knight Rises. There's elements of Dark Knight Returns and BVS. There's elements of these things thrown into these movies, and then they build off of them. But none of them have captured the feel of these graphic novels before in completion, totally. They, like I said, they just borrow things here and there, and it's cool to see those things. And obviously, I love them. But I was longing for a true graphic novel brought to life. And that's what this movie was. This movie gave me everything I was wanting out of a Batman movie. Everything that I wanted out of a Batman movie. I'm going to just go, start to finish, because I think that's going to be the easiest way for me to keep my thoughts organized. So you start the movie off, and it started off awesome for me. I love a lot of older movies, like 80s. I love a lot of the 80s. Obviously, we talked about it on this channel, 80s horror and stuff like that. And I like Kubrick and all those stuff. And something that I think I enjoy that is kind of not, as prevalent in today's media. Hey, what's going on, Derpy Gaming? How you doing? I'm gonna pop your comment up here. How you doing, sir? I just want to warn you. I know it's in the title, but I just wanted to say it, off the hand too. I'm talking very detailed about the new Batman movie. So if you have not seen it, I don't want to spoil it for you. This movie was fantastic going in, completely blind. So I don't want to spoil it. If you haven't seen it, if you have, feel free to jump in on the conversation. I'm going to be talking details. And I was just about to go down, just, beat for beat down through the plot. And if the comments start popping up, I'm just going to turn the chat overlay on. So it's over here on the side. How's it looking over on YouTube? Tonight was your second time. That's awesome. Yeah, I watched it for the second time last night. And, I wanted to watch it a second time because I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. I wanted to watch it for a second time because I wanted to, cement my thoughts on things and, make sure that I remember things. It's a 3-hour lot to remember on one sitting, especially when the adrenaline's high, you're hyped up, you're cheering, you're excited for things. It's hard. It's easy to miss things. So I wanted to watch it again to kind of cement my thoughts. You did get to watch it at the fan event. That's cool. That's a lot of cool. That's cool. I wanted to go watch it. I'm in Ohio. I wanted to go watch it in Cleveland, and it was sold out. It went on sale, and it was on sale when I was at work. I saw it go on sale, so I was like, okay, when I go on break, I'm buying me a ticket to go to the IMAX and watch this. And went to break, and they was sold out already. So I said, okay, maybe I'll change. I'll go to another city. And I checked the next city over, sold out. Checked the next city over, sold out. I was like, okay, I'm upset that I don't get to see it in IMAX and I don't get to see the fan event, but I'm so happy that this movie is selling out. So, all right, hey, yeah, you gotta stick together. Where'd you see it at? I'm curious. Did you catch Columbus? I know that was another one that I wanted to go check out. So I'm curious to see where you actually went. Okay, got you. How is it over there? Have a good showing? I'm hoping it looks good on YouTube because earlier, YouTube tends to, because I'm watching it on Twitch, but a lot of times it'll look great on Twitch, and then I have it going to Twitter as well. But I wish I could take it off of Twitter, even though that's where a lot of the people who follow me. I wish I could take it off of Twitter just because it would, I feel like it would make it run better. But it always runs nice on Twitch. It's clear, it's nice, the colors are bold and everything. And then YouTube always looks washed out. I don't know why. Everyone clapped. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it was great. Now, like I said, I was just about to start my, starting and just walk through the plot. So if you'd like to join in, I'm going to just break down, scene by scene, and you can give your thoughts and stuff. But I was just about to say, from the very beginning, this had me hooked. It had me sold. I was like, this movie's going to be good because I'm an 80s horror guy. I love a lot of the 80s movies, a lot of 80s action movies as well. One thing that they used to always do is the title sequences used to always be super creative. Nowadays, they still, I don't want to be one of those people who says, oh, modern movies suck. I'm not one of those people. Obviously, I love modern movies as well. But something that's not as prevalent in today's media is title sequences and having an interesting title sequence and stuff. And when this movie started and you just get big, bold, taking up the whole screen, it just says The Batman. Just pops up, Ave Maria starts playing. It's like, okay, that was really cool. It was different. It had a very noir feel. I was like, okay, this feels like I'm reading a graphic novel. I was like, okay, you've got me. Let's see what you got next. And so that was just like a cool little thing that, it's very minor, but it just added to the overall feel for me. So then you get the scene of the Riddler. Obviously at the time, you kind of left wondering whether it's the Riddler, it could be Batman or whatever. You see a family being stalked. You see there's these binoculars, whatever. They're looking around on the building. They look in the window and you see a kid swinging a sword around. He stabs the dad, and does that. Runs up, hugs the mom, grabs his stuff. Dad gets up. He goes, you see it's Halloween night. He's dressed up. I'm with you, brother, and I'm going to read it out just so anybody who can't read it, if it's blurry or something. Derpy Gaming. To me, this was better than The Dark Knight as a Batman film, not action film. This is the definitive Batman we always wanted. I'm 100% with you. And I thought that after I watched it the first time, I said, that was my favorite Batman movie. I think this is my favorite Batman. And I said, no, I don't want to say that yet. I want to watch it again first because I don't want to be one of the people that's super hyperbolic. Says, oh, this is the greatest film ever. I wanted to watch it again. So the things that I liked, I could see if they still hold up, without as much of the hype, and then see if there's maybe some more negatives that maybe I missed it on first watch. Watched it second time, loved it even more. And I said, okay, I think it's pretty safe to say for me now, this might be my favorite Batman movie. And it is. Because of Gotham City. That actually absolutely played a part. And I was actually talking with a guy last night. The fact that it's always raining, it's always gloomy, it's always dark, gave it a very 7 vibe. I know that that comparison has been done to death now. But it did. It felt like the unnamed city in 7, where it's constantly raining. It makes everything feel gloomy, and that's how Gotham City felt. I feel that way too. I think a lot of it is, there's a lot of gatekeeping, where people say is no movie. I heard it in some reviews I was watching because obviously after this, I went and I watched a lot of different reviews and stuff. A lot of my favorite reviewers, I wanted to hear what they said, and it was very mixed. You know, I had some that hated it, some that loved it, a lot of in between. And one thing that I heard, one of the common things that I heard in a lot of the videos was people saying, obviously it'll never top the Dark Knight, but you know, it was good. Obviously it'll never top the Dark Knight. And to me, that's very gatekeepish. Does that make sense? If I know that's not, you know, like a real word or anything, but it's very much that way where you're putting a boundary there and you're saying, okay, nothing can get past this. Things can get close, but nothing can get past this no matter what. I think that limits, you know, cinema. You know, if everybody is trying to beat the Dark Knight, nothing's just going to be good. If you take your own approach, which is what Matt Reeves did, he took his own approach. It's really not similar in any way to the Dark Knight. There's really not anything comparable. But you got his own version and stuff, and you get to see his take, and then you can say, okay, now look back and go, okay, yeah, this I like better. This I don't. Maybe this I wish could have been a little better. You know, this, and you can compare like that. But I think to set that boundary right at the beginning and say nothing is going to beat the Dark Knight, I think that's very, very silly to do that. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of meats in there, but yeah, I'm with you. And I'd throw in Hush as well. When I was watching it, I felt like, you know, as a lot of little things clicked for me and go, oh, okay, there's a little bit of Hush in there. I see that. So, but yeah, I agree with you. All that with Hush, and we're on the same city, or same city. I was reading. We're on the same page. But yeah, so back where so you get to see this, you know, the goggle or the binoculars and everything, you're looking, and obviously it sets up this creepy vibe. You have the song playing, you had that cool title sequence, and now you've got this creepy, you know, the stalking, and it automatically sets this creepy vibe. And one thing that I thought was pretty cool, and I don't know how many I haven't heard very many other people say it, if any, and I thought was kind of cool for myself, and I'm interested to see, you know, if you felt the same way. Instantly, what I thought, I saw this kid, you know, he's swinging his sword around and everything. And, well, you know what? I'll touch on that when we get farther along. So anyways, you got this creepy scene going. He looks up, you see the skylight. You skip inside to the apartment and you see it's the mayor. And he's watching the debates. You know, it's coming up for re-election. He's watching the debates. And he's talking about how, you know, he did, you know, he's talking about, you know, we did good, you know, we did good. And he's kind of, you know, feeling iffy on the debates and how they went and stuff. And you're seeing on the wall, you have, you know, how they had this huge drug bust and everything. He's got all this good stuff for the GCPD and everything. And then he starts walking around. And you get this awesome, chilling, actually just thinking about it, I kind of got chills again. This awesome shot of when he walks, pitch black, the TV lights up, there like flashes, and you see the Riddler standing in the room. Easily one of the creepiest shots in all of Batman. And anything Batman, this is one of the creepiest shots of all time. It was absolutely chilling. You see him standing there. It's like a Michael Myers or something like that, where he's just watching. And he's standing there, and, you know, the TV's reflected on the glasses. It's just these big wide eyes. And then you get the close-up, and he's not even moving his face. You just see his eyes turning. It felt chilling, and I loved that. And that was, yeah, so, yeah, you agree. Yeah, that was an awesome, awesome introduction to the Riddler. And then, obviously, he freaks out, and he attacks him, hits him over the head, falls to the ground, which I thought was kind of cool. You know, he's not this brute strength guy, and you get the callback to that later on where he's talking with Batman. He says, I don't have the physical strength. All my strength is up here. You see that in this first scene. You know, he hits the guy, but he falls. He doesn't have the power to take this guy down, you know, like Batman does. So he kind of trucks into him, gets on top of him, and then just starts going to town. And I thought, oh, man, so this is the movie we're in for here. Yeah, yes. I remember watching it, and the first time I remember I was watching it, and it was quiet. Obviously, you're, you know, paying attention and stuff. And so I was quiet. I wasn't even eating popcorn because, you know, the crunch would have been too loud. And so I'm sitting there, and he walks to the side, and all of a sudden you see the silhouette, and then the light flickers, and then you see him standing there, and it was just, you feel your heart sink. And it was like, oh my, this is creepy. And then when he attacks him and the music, swells up and you get the creepy violins just screeching while he's going to town. You hear him screaming while he's doing it. He's so it automatically set the tone. This guy is creepy. And, then he walks over and he gets his duct tape and he starts pointing, and you get that shot that everybody saw from the teaser where he's pulls the tape up, he tears it off, and he starts taping the guy's head up, and he cuts. Awesome. Best possible way to open this movie. The Batman movies all have pretty cool openings. I mean, you look through, you had, in '89, you had Batman, taking out those two thugs on the rooftop. Very cool opening to Batman. And Returns, I think Returns started with Penguin's origin, so I won't put that one on there. But you go through them. You have Batman Begins. The opening to it was hold up. Now I'm drawing a blank. I was thinking about the others when I said it. Batman Begins starts with Bruce falling in the hole, right? I think so. Now I'm drawing a blank. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I've watched it more times than I can count. I'm drawing a blank on it. Anyway, we'll just say, okay. Dark Knight opens with the bank robbery and the Joker's bank robbery. Dark Knight Rises one of my favorite sequences of all time is the plane hijacking in the beginning. Batman Superman opens with this awesome scene of Metropolis being destroyed and Bruce running into the debris. And you get all these awesome openings, and so this movie needed a good opening. It's kind of become synonymous with Batman movies that they have a strong opener, and this movie needed that, and I think it knocked it out of the park. It's easily my favorite opening sequence for a Batman movie. That's so creepy. Obviously I love horror movies. So when I saw that and it cuts to black, I was like, that was great. That was so great. And I love that. This is the Riddler. This Riddler is going to be tough. People say that, Heath Ledger's Joker will never be topped. Who else? Some other ones that people are always saying. People are always doing that. This person will never be topped. This person will never be topped. I feel like you could make a strong case that this Riddler, it will be a long time before this Riddler gets topped. If ever. This Riddler was fantastic. But so that's the opening sequence, and it does. It sets the tone of the film perfectly. So then you open and you get the Bruce narration, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, okay, that's awesome, because it's very much Year One vibes, and Year One is a great one. I love it. I agree. I'm not somebody who says Ledger can't be topped. Obviously, I love Ledger's performance. I thought the Joker was awesome. Still today, one of the best movie villains, I think, of all time. I'm not somebody who says he can't be topped or he can't be matched. In my opinion, I think Bane matched him. And in some days, I enjoy Bane more. It just depends on the day. But yeah, Paul Dano's Riddler, I think, is going to age very well. Very well. I think this movie as a whole is going to age fantastically, but speaking just specifically about his Riddler, I think he's gonna go down pretty well in terms of movie villains and comic book villains. But yeah, it set Year One vibes hard when he started narrating, and he says, I don't remember exactly what all he said, but he's talking about I've been doing this for 2 years now, and, or he says like it's Wednesday, Halloween. I've been doing this for 2 years. I feel like I haven't even, made a difference. He's doing his talk, and it really does feel great, to hear it like that. And, you're seeing, and I do remember he talks about, the streets are packed because of the holidays, and, you see him walking through the street, and you see him, riding the bike or whatever, and then you see, you get another one of my favorite sequences where you start seeing these people committing crimes. You see the guy with the weird pumpkin mask robbing the convenience store. Then it cuts over and shows the guy vandalizing the bank, and they're smashing the windows and lighting things on fire, and they're spray painting the pillars on the outside. And then you see the other guys playing the knockout gang with random strangers, and they're targeting this random old man on the subway. You see all these different crimes happening simultaneously, and you hear Batman. He says, "I can't be everywhere at once." And then you see, the guy with the mask that robbed the convenience store. He runs outside, and he's running, and he's about to run into this dark alley, and he stops and he looks up because the helicopter's flying through, and the light lands on him for a second, and then it keeps going. And he looks up, and he sees the bat signal. And it just locks on his face, and you see he's wearing a mask, which is funny, but he's wearing a mask, but you can see the fear on this guy. Even though you can't see his face, you can see his fear through this mask. And he's looking up, and he sees that, and all of a sudden he turns and he looks at that dark alley where he was about to go. He's about to run into that alley, and he looks, and all of a sudden he's second guessing which way he was running. He backs up, taxi hits him, and he falls down. He gets up, he runs a different way. And immediately I was like, this is awesome. And then you get the guys at the bank, and they're spray painting. They look up, and they see the sign, or the bat signal in the sky. And he drops his paint, and he looks, and it rolls over into the shadows. And he just stares into that shadow like, oh boy. And you even hear in the narration, in the voiceover, you hear Bruce say, they think I'm hiding in the shadows. He says, but I am the shadows, and it's cool. It's symbolic because he might not be there. And as we saw in the movie, he wasn't in that shadow at the bank. He wasn't in that alleyway in that shadow. He wasn't in there, but he is the shadows now. Those criminals see the shadows and equate it. Batman's over there. Just the thought that Batman could be there is enough. And so they bolt. I thought that was awesome. It was an awesome detail. Then you cut and you see and obviously for anybody who saw the Fandom trailer early on, you kind of know what's going to happen to these guys. And you're just waiting for it to happen. It's like, okay, this is going to be good. So they see the old man, and they chase him off the subway, and they're about to knock him out. They got the kid. They're like, all right, knock him out. He's got half painted. He's not initiated yet. And all of a sudden the kid looks up. He sees the bat signal. And he's afraid. But this gang, they're just like, all right, hit him, knock him out. Here you go. And all of a sudden you hear these steps. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I was like, they've just turned Batman into Darth Vader. That's what they did. They made Batman Darth Vader of this film. The effect that Darth Vader has on people. When you watch Rogue One and you hear his breathing, that's the same effect that this Batman's footsteps let out. You hear Vader's breathing from the shadows. It's like, oh boy, this is bad. When you hear Batman's footsteps coming out of the shadows, it's like the same thing. Oh boy. So he's absolutely the Darth Vader of Batman's movies now. Absolutely. The sound design of this film is fantastic. And we'll get to, as we talk, we'll get to a scene later on where the sound design is flawless. But we won't get there. We'll talk about that yet. So you see Batman comes walking out of the shadows, and he's just standing there. He comes walking out stone-faced, no emotion whatsoever. He's walking all calm. And then you get that guy, who are you supposed to be? And he runs at him with the pipe or machete or whatever he's holding. And you get that shot that everybody saw at Fandom where he grabs his arm, he just hammers this guy, drops him on the ground, and continues to just wear this guy's face out. And he sits there and says, I'm vengeance. And that's where the trailer cuts. But then you get to see farther, and you see, you cut to everyone else in their face, and they're like, oh boy, we're going to have to fight this one out, guys. And then you just see that awesome shot of Batman standing up in front of all these guys. And he kind of walks out even closer and kind of walks into the middle of them and provokes them. You see they shuffle around, then they attack, and you get an awesome action scene. And this is where, because I didn't watch all the trailers. I watched the teaser from the first Fandom, and that was it. That's it. So I saw Batman at the crime scene. The first, when he walks in, does this mean anything to you? I saw that. I saw the I'm Vengeance scene, and I saw the flames shoot out of the Batmobile. And that's it. That's pretty much all that first trailer showed. And you get to see some shots of Catwoman or something in there too. It didn't show anything else. And that was back when they said, I think they had said they only had like 30% of the movie was filmed. So this was very early on. So I didn't know yet how the fight scenes were going to be in this movie. You see that quick little thing there, and it's like, okay, that was a good start. I wonder how they're going to shoot. How they're going to. Obviously, the choreography's got some. There's some talent in the choreography here. How they shoot it makes a big difference. The way the Nolan trilogy shot their action scenes, especially in Batman Begins, was very choppy, very close up, very disorienting. Obviously, it was a stylistic choice, but it's not particularly enjoyable to watch. So I was thinking, okay, I don't know how they're going to shoot their action scenes in this movie. I'm hoping that we get nice wide shots, we get to see the action. And boy, was I pleased. This first action scene was so great. And I was like, okay, we're in good hands. The cinematography is already beautiful. The score is already awesome. The acting, that talent that's on board for this movie, already great. Matt Reeves, I obviously, like I said, I haven't seen, I'm not familiar with all of his filmography, but what I am familiar with, I do enjoy. He's in the horror direction. The writing is obviously on point. This movie has potential. And, so you get this awesome first action sequence where he just fries the guy, too, with the little electricity. And the other kid runs off. And this is where I think you get the first, really set up for the arc that Batman is on. Because, he talks about he talks about how, it's been 2 years. He feels like he hasn't made a difference. But he's talking, I'm vengeance. I exist to punish the criminals here. That's his whole existence, is to punish the criminals. And you kind of get the first elements of the arc that they have him on for this film, where in the first, he takes out all these guys, the kid runs away, and he looks over at the guy he just saved. He just saved this guy's life. And he looks over at him, and the guy says, "Please don't hurt me." And I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Because now not only do we have, a Batman who is feared by the criminals, but we have a Batman who's feared by the public, which is something that we got to see in Batman v Superman, where he was so terrifying to people that the women he just saved from being trafficked were too scared to leave their cages because they knew Batman was still there. I love that element of fear that Batman has, and we haven't got to see it fully fleshed. Like I said, we got to see a glimpse of it in Batman v Superman, and they talk about it a little later on, when Clark is in Gotham and he's interviewing people, and they tell him, you might want to get back over to your town, get out of this city before dark, because you might run into him. And so I like that element, and I wanted to see that more fleshed out, so I'm so glad we got to see that here. But they do something more with it, where it's not just, it's not just about, him being fearful, but they set up this arc that he can go on from A to B, that by the end of the film, you've seen a definite change. But we'll get more into that when you start to see more elements of it. But it was a great place to start the arc. And so then obviously he leaves, he sees the signal, he goes over there, walks into the crime scene. The cops don't want him there. They're stopping him, they're like, hey, whoa, Gordon, you're allowing this? And Gordon, this is where you get introduced to Jeffrey Wright's Gordon, who I thought was great. He's a cool addition. He's one of the more comedic characters in this movie. He had a lot of funny moments. Even though this is not a funny movie by any means, there's not a lot of comedy. There are some moments, and Jeffrey Wright's Gordon has a lot of those. I'm gonna catch. This isn't an action film, people. This is slow-paced crime, detective noir sprinkled with some action, but it works. It felt like Arkham Origins. Absolutely. Yeah, you hit it on the mark. And actually, I was expecting less action. I know that a lot of people went into this movie wanting a whole bunch of action. I was expecting less. I thought we were going to get that scene with those the face paint people. I thought we were going to get that one. I knew we were going to get one at the end, where he's fighting some people. And I figured, he might do some little bits here and there. I wasn't expecting, this movie has 4 or 5 action set pieces where Batman gets to just go, gets to do his thing, So it actually had more action than I was expecting. So that was a pleasant surprise for me. But you get to see the cops don't trust him. The cops don't like him. They don't want him there. They tell him that, and they look at Gordon. They're shocked that Gordon would be okay with this. And like, you're gonna let this guy in here? So again, just continuing on with the people, the citizens are afraid of Batman as well as the criminals, and the cops don't like him either. But this Batman is hated by the public, which is, I think it contributes a lot to the character of Bruce Wayne, which we haven't got to yet, and we'll talk more in depth about Bruce Wayne when we see Bruce Wayne, but which is coming up right after this. But so, anyways, he starts walking around, and this is where you get your first glimpse into Detective Batman, which I thought was great. I've wanted to see a Detective Batman since I really started getting into the novels and the games and stuff. I recommend it as well. I only played Origins once, and then you can't find it anymore on PlayStation. So I'm gonna have to see if I can get my hands on another copy of it to do another playthrough. But yeah, I loved Origins, and Origins had the cool cinematic trailers as well. So, but I'll bump that. Anyways, so this was cool though. You got to see, ever since I started getting into the games and to the graphic novels, because I always loved the Dark Knight trilogy. I got into very early on. I was 8 or 9 years old. I can't remember what month it was when the Dark Knight come out, and I had already fell in love with Batman Begins. So the Dark Knight trilogy was a trilogy I grew up with. This was my Batman, and I loved the animated series. I used to watch the animated series every day. I'd be at my grandparents' house in the morning. That's what I watched all morning long. And I'd record it on the VHS tapes to watch again later. So that was what I grew up with. And then I got a little older, started getting game systems, and then started playing the Arkham games. Then I started, branching out and reading some more graphic novels. My first one was Punisher. And then I started getting in, and I wanted to get my hands on Batman so bad. It's like, I got to get, so I'd ask my buddies, they were all big into him. And I'd say, hey, if you have any or if you can I borrow a Batman one from you? And they'd say, well, I don't have any, but I can get one. And I'd be like, okay, when you get it, can I borrow it? And that was kind of my introduction into that side. And the graphic novel version of Batman very much is a detective. A lot of them anyways, not all of them. There's a lot of different iterations, but a lot of them. And so ever since that, in obviously the Arkham games, I've wanted to see that side of Batman really fleshed out. And when I saw this scene, I was like, this feels like it's ripped straight out of a graphic novel. This is awesome. And obviously, you get that, he's collecting clues, and he's pointing the cops to directions. He points the forensic photographer over towards the blood stain on the floor, and where the carpet tool was. He's pointing them in all these directions for clues, and he's gathering these clues himself, and he's even inputting, talking about the severed thumb. He's filling in a lot of these blanks that they don't have, because he is obviously a lot more mentally, he's a little more intellectually sound than they are. This is just another job, and then Batman is passionate about this stuff, and he's looking around, he sees things, and he's letting them know. And so that was really cool. And then you get some really cool stuff. And if I forget something, you'll have to forgive me, because I'm going off the top of my head. But so if you don't think the Batman is better than Dark Knight, it's a Batman film, you're blind by nostalgia, and read Batman. I mean, yeah, there's I feel like if people would not compare as much, if they would stop trying to compare and just think about them, they would find that this movie is a lot better than they're giving it credit for. Because a lot of people don't want anything to beat The Dark Knight. I know people who, they have The Dark Knight as their favorite, and they don't want it to be beat. They say they do. They're like, oh, maybe, hopefully this will beat The Dark Knight. But in their mind, The Dark Knight is set at number one, and they don't want it to be topped. It's their favorite movie, and they don't want their favorite movie to be beat by something else. And so, again, it goes back to that gatekeeping mindset that I talked about earlier. But so then you get introduced, and again, like I said, if I forget something, just let me know. But I'm trying to go off of memory here and just off the top of my head. But you get introduced to, his Batman, Bruce Wayne, and then he goes back to the Batcave. I'm trying to think if that's how it plays out. He leaves, he goes to the Batcave, and that's where you see him take the contacts out. And that was a cool element too. I thought that was another interesting thing that they added, for the detective side. Like, he has these contacts in that is recording everything, and he sweeps back over it after. So he stops being Batman and continues to be Batman because he's not out on the street. He's not out detecting. He's not out fighting criminals anymore. But now he is going over everything. He's studying his crime scenes and stuff. Really cool element. But then you get introduced to Alfred. And Andy Serkis is a class act no matter what. I love Andy Serkis. And when they said he was going to be Alfred, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm sold. I love Andy Serkis. And so when he comes walking in, I like this element that you get because Bruce Wayne and Alfred aren't the Bruce Wayne and Alfred that we've grown accustomed to loving now. You have the butler version where he's just a butler in the older movies, and then in the Nolan movies he's very much a father figure who is a partner in crime. And then you have the Batman v Superman where he is a partner in crime, and to the point where he's hands-on involved with what Batman's doing. So this is really the first time on the big screen that we get to see a Batman who is kind of resentful towards Alfred out of his, as a way, almost like he vents his frustration, he vents his pain and his suffering out onto Alfred, as kind of like an escape. He uses Alfred as a means to vent. And you get to see a little bit of that here, to the point where he even says, you're not my father, and he says, I'm well aware. So you get this point. And what I was about to say about Bruce Wayne earlier, and I want to say it now that he's been, introduced, at this point in the story, this is cool because I think a lot of people who don't like, if you don't like this portrayal of Bruce Wayne, then you just don't like this portrayal of Bruce Wayne. That's fine. But I think some people, and I think you could probably say a lot of people, kind of miss the point of what this Bruce Wayne is supposed to be. This isn't they didn't want to do another origin story, where, Batman Begins did the origin story and you see Martha and Thomas shot. Batman versus Superman, you get to see a glimpse into the origin. They didn't want to do another Batman origin here. And I think what's cool is they didn't do a Batman origin. They did a Bruce Wayne origin. And, because Bruce Wayne, effectively, he died when his parents did. And the Batman was born. And he's progressed and he's built this Batman persona. And that's become who he is. Up and now we're at this point in the movie. He is Batman with or without the mask. And he carries that same energy over as Batman no matter what. So it's cool because they use this movie as kind of a origin story for Bruce Wayne. Because you have, Alfred, at this part in the movie, he's telling him, the accountants are coming over. You have to think about these things. You have to balance being Batman and being Bruce Wayne. And he tells him, do you not even care about your father's legacy? This is your family's business. And you have to upkeep this thing, because Bruce Wayne is just as important as Batman. And at this point in time, Bruce doesn't want to hear it. He's Batman through and through. And he says, I don't care what happens to me. He doesn't care about the Bruce Wayne persona because that persona to him died when his parents died. So this movie is effectively a Bruce Wayne origin story because you have right here, He's Batman all the way through, but by the end of the movie, he realizes he has to be both. And that's the only way this mission of his is going to work, is if he is both. He has to be Batman, but he also has to be Bruce Wayne. And he has to have that hope and optimism and positivity, which Bruce Wayne has. And then he can have the fear and the intimidation from Batman, but he has to be that symbol of hope. And he can't do that without Bruce Wayne. Really cool duality, and I think this movie was a great origin story for the Bruce Wayne character. So yeah, you get that set up. Let's see here. Something in the Way, absolutely. I've had that song on repeat since the first trailer drop. You know, I already enjoyed the song, but it meant so much more now after hearing it. And then you get the cool piano and the way Michael, I'm not even going to say his last name because I'm going to butcher it, but Michael G is what I'm going to call him, the guy who did the score. You know, the piano and stuff that he added. I've had that on repeat for 2 years now. Bruce Wayne was year one and year two story. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. You know, this is Bruce Wayne's origin. And I'm glad to see someone who feels the same way. And, you know, maybe I'm completely out of left field with that. But to me, that's what I saw. That's the movie I watched, was that it's not a Batman origin story. You know, we're not seeing Thomas and Martha get shot. We're not seeing him train with the League of Shadows, or we're not seeing Alfred teaching him how to fight, or whatever version they're going to use. We didn't see any of that. Batman is here already. But what we're seeing is a Bruce Wayne origin, where he's learning compassion and empathy and hope. And so that's the point. I think that's the arc of the story. You have that. That is the arc. And that's the arc he goes on from beginning to end. He starts out as a beacon of fear, intimidation, and just, you know, darkness. And by the end, people are reaching out and they don't want to let him go because they see him as hope. They take his hand in the dark, and it's so, and I don't even think it's subtle. It is so on the nose that he is the one holding up a light and people are following him. That's as on the nose as it gets. That is what the arc he is on, where he starts the movie saying, I am the shadows, and he ends the movie, I'm holding the light, you know, for everybody to follow. I'm a beacon for you. Awesome. And I thought the thematic elements of this movie are so rich and so great, and I think he portrayed them perfectly. He didn't beat you over the head with them, even though I just said it's very on the nose, and I think it kind of is. You know, it's a visual representation of what is happening. But he's not beating you over the head with it the whole movie. He's not saying, this is what is happening. You know, he's not doing that. He's saying, here's all the clues. Make of it what you will. And I think that's, you know, the themes of this movie are so rich. And I hate talking about the themes of a movie. That's one of the cringiest things when I hear somebody talk about themes. But I think in this case, it is very, very relevant because the themes are what makes this movie what it is. So then, you know, we get introduced to Bruce, and then he's back out, and I'm trying to think of how it all plays out. He finds out that how does it go? He goes to visit Penguin. I don't remember what it was that led him to go visit Penguin right now. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, he goes to visit Penguin. Awesome action sequence. Again, another great sequence. I'm going to read this before I get into that. Do you know how he was in year one in the animated film and graphic novel, in the scene in his mansion in the beginning? That was Bruce Wayne throughout this entire film. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's what we see. I think we saw it great, you know. Obviously, this Bruce Wayne is brooding. He's depressed. He doesn't care whether he lives and dies. You could almost make a case for him being a little bit suicidal. You know, he's just walking into gunfire and he's diving off of rooftop and stuff. You know, this Bruce Wayne doesn't care if he dies. And it almost seems like he kind of maybe wants to a little bit. And by the end, he realizes his importance. I think that's the arc, you know. So, yeah, I'm with you. You know, I was totally on board with this interpretation of Bruce Wayne. So, yeah, anyways, you get this awesome action sequence between – oh, that's what it was. The clues. I knew I was missing something. So you get the clues with I completely skipped over that. So he's working the cipher. He wakes up in the morning. You see he's all bruised up as he puts his shirt on. He walks down. Another element I thought was cool is how pale Robert Pattinson was in this movie. I mean, obviously Bruce Wayne spends all of his time out at night, so he's not going to have any sunlight. On top of the fact that there's not much sunlight in Gotham anyways because it's always raining. So Bruce Wayne was very pale. I thought that was cool, and he keeps sunglasses on because he's nocturnal. He lives at night, so the sunlight's too bright, and he doesn't get a lot of it because his skin's so pale. Very cool element that I thought, just a little visual cues just to add to the world that he's in. But Alfred has solved the cipher, or most of it. He's worked it out, and he's like, hey, some of these letters are missing. And so they're working it out, and they're like, maybe, there's something else here that we're not seeing. And Bruce tells him, take off the ones that were missing, and they look at it, and it spells out drive. And they're like, okay. So Bruce says, okay, drive. Let's go check his garage out. Just check his car. They go in there. They look at the car. They see, the tires been, gashed open with the same shears that he used to just clip the thumb off. Bruce knows what he's looking for with the word drive, the car, and just the play. It's a thumb. He knows what he's looking for. So he opens the car up. And I'm just going to take this off. He opens the car up, and, oh, that's wild. Never mind. Starting to look like my own supervillain here. But he opens the car up. Gordon's like, what are we looking for? And he says USB port. He knows what he's looking for because of drive. He snipped a thumb. He pulls it out, and he even says it. And I heard this line, and I was like, that was the most Batman line I've ever heard. I could see this being in one of the animated films or written right on the page of a comic where he says, he holds it up, and he's looking at him, he goes, thumb drive. Hilarious. It was one of the most Bruce Wayne Batman lines of all time. Yeah, the Batman voice was really great in this movie too. I agree with you. The thumb drive, yeah, it was funny. That was the most Batman thing that was said in this whole movie, probably ever. Was that thumb drive line? He says it, no, connotation or anything to his voice, just straight. He just looks at him, thumb drive, nothing else. That was as Batman as it gets. So that was really cool. So then they put it in the computer. Obviously, you get another funny, line from Gordon. Like I said, he was one of the funniest parts of this whole movie. What jokes are in this movie, a lot of them came from Gordon. And, he tells him, you got to use thumb as the thumbprint, and he holds it. Oh, this guy's hilarious. Does the thumbprint, opens it up. It's a lot of pictures of the mayor with a stripper, and it's like, okay, obviously he was having an affair at this club. Batman's like, I'm going to check it out. Then you see all these pictures get sent out to all the news outlets. So this is bad. This has been made very public. And, something that they were trying to keep under wraps, as they do. This is one of those things, you always see it where it's like, let's keep a lid on this. Let's not let the press find out. The Riddler just blew the lid right off of it. They look at it, they see the pictures, and as soon as they see it, it sends out to all the news outlets, and of course they run with the story. And you get to see it a little bit later, which I thought was cool. In the apartment, in Catwoman's apartment, you see on the TV, they're watching the news, and it shows the picture, and it's got her face circle, and they say, "Who is she?" is the headline. Really cool. I thought that was just a cool moment. They didn't have to go that detailed with it, but they did. It was interesting. But anyway, so they use this. Batman's like, I'm going to go pay a visit to this club. So he shows up. He opens the door. You know who I am? And the guy goes, yeah. Shuts the door, opens it back up, and the two twins step out. And they're giving him a hard time. They're not letting him in. Batman just pops him. He dispatches him right there. And he walks in, and he's walking through like he owns the place. I mean, he's shoving through people, and he's pushing through. You see people running after him, and all of a sudden they attack him, and they're grabbing him, and they're trying. And he's just going through. He's just laying people out. Awesome action sequence. The club setting was cool. Actually, since you love comparisons so much, this actually was very reminiscent to me of the nightclub scene in The Dark Knight. With I think it's Maroni. He's in there, and you see him going through, and he's hitting people on the rail and stuff like that. But this one was just, you got to see it all. It's wide. The choreography's awesome. One of my favorite moments of this fight scene is when he takes the bat from the one guy and he's clocking people with this bat, and then the one DA guy pulls up the gun on him, and he looks at him, and then he tosses the bat and hits him right in the face. One of the funniest moments of this whole fight. I mean, it was just one of those. It felt like like Michael Myers when he kicks the door and it spins the gun around and pops the lady in the face. That's what this felt like. Batman just looks at him, throws the bat, hits the guy in the nose, walks up through, and he's just still going ham. And you get introduced to this world. This universe is Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, played by Colin Farrell, who is definitely one of the standouts of this movie. He's completely unrecognizable in this movie. It was really cool. But he shows up, whoa, take it easy, sweetheart. They go into the back room and they're talking. He's like, who's this girl? Obviously he's not giving him anything. He's not telling him. And, they're having a pretty cool conversation, where you're getting, kind of getting a glimpse into how this world works, how the club scene here works and everything. And then you get introduced to Selena Kyle. And she comes walking in, and her and Batman lock eyes. And I thought that was a really cool moment. They lock eyes and they just kind of, stare for a second. It cuts back over to Cobblepot, and he's just kind of, okay, don't, he's not going to bite. Come on in here, Cool moment, Yeah, he did. I'm agreeing with you. I don't know how early you sent it. Oh, I guess I can see the timestamp right there. But yeah, I'm with you. But so you introduce an obvious right away, Batman's intrigued by this woman, and so he's talking with Penguin, and she walks out, and you have that moment where he slams Cobblepot into the window, and he's like, "Tell me who she is." It's right after he says, she's with the mayor. He goes, "Oh, is that the mayor? I couldn't tell." And Batman's just, his patience gone, slams him into the glass, and he's talking to him. He's like, "Tell me where I can find this chick." And he sees in the reflection, he sees Selena Kyle looking, and she's looking around, looking at him. And then he lets him go, and he turns around, and she dips. So then he dips out, and he follows her. And this was one of the first scenes where I started picking up on what they were doing with the Batman character, and just reinforced what I was saying earlier about his arc in this film. This is one of the first moments where they really reinforced that, because he follows her back. She goes into her apartment. The girl in the pictures is there. She's crying. Like I said, it's on the news. Who is she? This chick is crying. She's nervous. She's like, "Oh no, they're going to come get me now that this is out." And Batman's watching this all through binoculars, exactly like the Riddler scene from the opening. I mean, it is shot the exact same way. The only difference is the song playing, and you don't hear Batman breathing like that. But it's shot the same way, the way he's looking through, and he's watching, and he's going room to room. It was perfectly mirroring the Riddler's actions and Batman's actions. Because, like I said, in this movie, Batman has to learn that he can't be all vengeance. He can't just vengeance, and he has to learn, to be hope and compassion and that light, for people to follow. He has to learn that, and the consequences of his actions of being just vengeance is perfectly demonstrated in the Riddler. His actions created the Riddler. That's cool, and they reinforce it again at the end, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But you see that, you see Selena Kyle, and you see she suits up, she goes over the rail, and she dips out. Batman follows her. She goes back to the crime scene. She drops in, she cracks the safe. Batman's in there. He goes, "You're really good at that." She turns around. She starts kicking on one of my favorite, elements of Catwoman. This was cool. Is she can handle herself? She says it multiple times. "I can take care of myself." You see her, she beats a few people throughout the movie. She can't beat Batman. And I like that, because a lot of modern movies today, to elevate one character, they have to bring another character down. And rather than build this character up too, they have to bring the characters down to a level that makes this one believable. Rather than having this character great and building this character up to be great, they're always playing that power grab game instead of just writing good characters. And I was so happy to see when they had Selena Kyle, and they made her look cool. They made her look like she can handle herself in this movie without compromising Batman's character. Which was cool. Batman, she couldn't beat Batman. She threw 100 kicks that in 2 seconds. She was just flopping kicks left and right, and he blocked every one of them. Caught her leg, threw her down on the table, and they have some tension there. It's like, ooh, there's some tension here. I like it. And he gets up, he takes the passport, he's walking, she's trying to get the passport back from him, and he's asking her, this is what he's after. He's like, I'm trying to protect her too. They hurt. Did he hurt her? Is this why you killed him? Like that? And she's like, stop it. I didn't kill him. And he grabs her, and they go around the wall, and he's got her mouth covered, and the cop's walking around. And you see it in her eyes. She starts off, she's fighting him, and obviously then she gets quiet because of the cop in there. And she's in there, but then you see her eyes change, and you see that she likes, being embraced by Batman. And this is where I said earlier, where I said, obviously they have year one inspirations, obviously the Long Halloween, obviously Arkham Origins. There's a lot of inspirations here. This is where my main inspiration, in my opinion, for Hush comes in, because the relationship between Catwoman and Batman and Hush is the central point of that story. And this is where they started demonstrating that in this, where he's got her, he's holding her in his mind. He's just keep trying to stay discreet so this cop doesn't see it, but you see it. At first, she's on the same page, and then her eyes turn, and she looks down, and all of a sudden, you realize she likes being embraced by Batman. She's got a thing for him. Really cool moment. Then he leaves. They talk for a second. He's like, "Help me, help me catch this guy." So they go back. He gives her the little thing, the little contact lenses. She goes into the club, starts talking, and this is where you kind of get to hear about the rat, and you hear about this, and you hear about that, and you hear all these interesting things. And actually, at this point, I'm pretty sure the other murder has happened too, because the rat thing, the rat thing hasn't happened. So they got the rat clue already. So yeah, before that, then you get introduced to a second murder of Riddler's, where he gets the police commissioner, chief, or whatever. And that murder was Jigsaw. That was a Jigsaw murder, where he's got this guy in this contraption where he's got his face in a box, and you find out later that it's a maze, and it's all got these tubes linking down to these hungry rats, and his eyes are open. And it's such a chilling scene, because you don't see it. You don't see what happened. You don't even get to see the aftermath, but it's implied, and you know what happened, because you saw where those little tubes led. Those rats, basically what those rats did, they crawled up and they ate into his eyes, and they crawled in, and they're crawling around in his head. They're eating. Disgusting. Horrible, horrible, horrible thing to happen. That's how he took this guy out. Very Jigsaw-esque, and he sent the video. And again, just reinforcing that this Riddler is creepy. This is something outside of anything we've ever seen before for a Riddler character, for really even a Batman character on the live screen, on the live, I said live action, I guess you could say. This is the first time we've actually really seen something this dark. Obviously we got the Joker sending in videos, and his, but this is the first time we really got to see this element in Batman, where the Riddler, he's created a trap. He's built a trap that's going to torture this guy. It's very dark, and it's very, very creepy and chilling. And so, yeah, then they get the clue, with the maze, and then Alfred figures it out, El Rata Lada, or Alada, however you say it, and rat with wings, and he says stool pigeon. This guy's obviously an informant for the police. So then he gets with Catwoman, gives her the context. She goes in, and he's seeing that all these people in here are cops. They work, they're cops, or they work with the police department, or they're high up government officials of Gotham and stuff. And he starts to realize, and you can hear kind of the shock with Batman. He's like, that guy works with the GCPD. He's from the DA's office, and then she sits down and she starts talking with the DA, and he mentions a rat. And she, Batman's like, hey, figure out more about that rat. Ask him about that rat, because that was just the clue he had heard. And she starts pressing him, and you find out that there was a rat that helped them take down Maroni and the Maroni drug operation. and which was the big case for the mayor. And so Batman's like, wow, this is a lot of information. So he's having her press and press and press. And all of a sudden, the one girl says, hey, enough of, this talk about rats and stuff. This is the same type of talk that got Annika killed. Or that got Annika taken or something, however she said it. And then Catwoman's like, what'd you say? And she goes, nothing. She gets up and walks away. And then Batman's like, no, I need you to, press this guy about the rat. This is the key to the whole case. And she gets up and she's like, no, I'm here for Annika. And so she follows the other girl, which was another thing, it was cool because Catwoman, that's a huge element to Catwoman's character is that she's not necessarily a bad guy. She works with Batman. She's a pretty good person, generally a good person. She does some things here and there, a little problem, but at heart, she's got a good heart, and she has a mind for the greater good. She works with Batman a lot, but she will not hesitate to abandon Batman or whoever she's working with to get what she wants. And in this case, it's very evident, and they displayed it perfectly here. He's wanting her to press about the rat. She's looking for Annika. She's choosing to look for Annika all day, every day. So she goes through. This is where you run into Falcone, and you get to meet Falcone, who is played by John Turturro, or how do you say his name? I know him as Ambrose. A lot of people know him from obviously I know him too from The Big Lebowski. I thought he was great as Falcone. I thought he was really cool. He gave a cool, an interesting take on the character because he didn't seem like he wasn't the typical, Godfather type mob boss. He's just kind of a grimy type of guy that, is shady. That's how he was. And with the things that they set up later on, to reveal later on, he very much is that character. So I thought, he did a great job with this character. So you meet her, you find out that there's some kind of relationship between him and Catwoman, but you don't know what. Batman implies that it's a sexual relationship. Oh, I didn't know you had a relationship with him. She said, I wasn't in a relationship with him. He said, well, that's what it sounded like. She said, I'm not doing this. Pull my text out, kills Batman's, stream there. He's like, well, there goes that. So then it seems like I'm trying to think. So next I think the next scene is the funeral where he's going, he's dressed up, suit and tie. Alfred comes downstairs. He's like, oh, can I take this? Or Bruce is watching over the video and Alfred comes walking in and he goes, oh, she's pretty like that. And Bruce kind of turns around and looks at him like, what? And he's, the girl, she's pretty. And Bruce is like, oh, well, and he doesn't say anything, because Bruce thinks so too. And then Alfred said, can I take this as a good sign? And at first I thought he was going to say the fact that he was watching, that he was talking with Selena Kyle and everything, because if you remember the Nolan trilogy, that was what that Alfred wanted the most for Batman, was for him to meet a girl, fall in love, and leave Gotham behind. That's what Alfred wanted, was for Bruce to be happy, find him, fall in love, and leave Gotham. And that was his, fantasy, was that when he went out and he was out and he sits down at the diner with his tea and he starts drinking, he looks across and he sees Batman there with a wife and a couple of kids. That was his, fantasy. And when I heard this Alfred say, should I take this as a good sign, right after talking about Catwoman being pretty, I thought that's what he was about to allude to, that Bruce was finally, starting to feel human emotions again. But then he says, the way he's dressed, he's in a three-piece suit, he's dressed up real nice, hair's combed back and everything. And he tells him, no, I've got to go to the memorial. He goes, oh, so Bruce Wayne's showing his face again. He says, well, serial killers like to revel in their work. So he's going to be there to see the effect that he's had. That's what he's going to do. So he's not going as Bruce Wayne. He's going as Batman, undercover. And so, again, just setting up the fact that this Bruce Wayne doesn't exist yet. Bruce Wayne doesn't exist yet. This is his origin story. So he goes to the funeral. You have all the people just protesting this funeral, saying no more lies, no more lies. And really cool element. They go in. Bruce Wayne, all he's doing is watching people. And he sees Falcone gets out of the car. he sees a girl's with him. She looks like she could be Selena Kyle, so he confronts. He starts going towards him, and gets stopped by the muscle. They stop him, and they're like, "Hey, it's Bruce Wayne, the only guy more reclusive than me." And you find out that Bruce's dad, Thomas Wayne, and Falcone had history, and Falcone had got shot in the past and couldn't go to the hospital, so he shows up at Thomas and Martha Wayne's door, and they operated him right there on the table, and Bruce watched down from the stairs, ripped directly out of The Long Halloween. And I saw that, I was like, okay, I like that. That was a cool little nod right there. I enjoy that. And I enjoyed that that's the direction that they took with this character. Then he gets stopped by the mayor, and the mayor's like, look, your history, we'll be trying to reach you, but your people keep saying you're unavailable. Your family had a history of philanthropy in this city, and as far as I can tell, you're not doing anything. And, and I'd like to change that. That's what she says. And she has to, she's like, she walks away. She's like, I want to continue this conversation. Stay here. And then Bruce looks up and he sees the kid from the beginning. Because I don't know if I said it or not, I can't remember. But in the opening murder with the mayor, he finds out that the kid that we saw in the beginning with the sword, swinging around, the kid is the one that found his dad dead. And Bruce, he looks at this kid and they make eye contact for a long time. And he sees him again at this funeral. He sees him up there at the front. Then you get the awesome scene where you hear the car, you hear commotion outside. All of a sudden, the car comes smashing up through the door. He looks up and he sees a silhouette of a guy standing up top. Everyone else is running, but this one guy standing there. He knows that's the Riddler. He's like, there he is. This guy, he's not even budging. He's the only person that didn't run and take cover. So he sees him up there and he's like, okay, that's the Riddler. But then the car comes smashing through, and his first thought, there's the Riddler. He could go get the Riddler, which is what Batman, that's what he does. He is vengeance. That's the guy he's after. But instead, he chooses to run back and save that kid, the little boy. He tackles him out of the way. And I think this is the first moment that we see this version of Bruce Wayne being born. Because he was at a crossroads there. We had this decision. He could have taken down the Riddler, solved he could have finished it right there, solved the case, boom, he's in custody, all of it's avoided. Or he can save this kid. And he chooses to abandon his mission to save this kid. And I think that's the first moment we get introduced to this version of Bruce Wayne, and that this version of Bruce Wayne starts to be born. This is where the origin begins for him. And so then, the car smashes, all the cops come up like, hey, step out of the vehicle, put your hands in the air. One thing that I forgot to mention after the club scene, the DA, he walks outside, he's trying, he's offering Catwoman a ride. She gets a taxi, she drives. He's walking, and you see it from the perspective of Riddler sitting in the back seat. And it's like, okay, this is creepy. It's still keeping up with the creepiness of this Riddler. And he ducks down, and the guy gets in his car, and he wipes the windshield off, and immediately, as a horror movie fan, I saw that and said, I know what you're nodding to. And it was almost directly from the original Halloween when Annie gets in the car. She sits there, the windshield's fogged up, and she reaches up and wipes the windshield off, and then Myers comes around and he strangles her. And when I saw that, I was like, that's cool. That's a cool little nod, because we haven't got very much horror Batman. We saw a little bit of it in BVS, got a little bit of it in Batman Begins, but this is the first time we're really getting to see a Batman movie that has very clear horror inspirations. And when I saw that, I was like, that was just cool. That was cool for a horror movie fan, a Halloween fan, a Michael Myers fan. That was cool. And I already said how his first scene very much reminded me of Michael Myers with the stalking, and you hear the breath, and then you see him standing in the shadows, and he's just watching this guy, and you see his eyes moving. Very much, this Riddler it feels like he's combining all of these horror icons and making one big character. Thought that was cool. So he takes him, and it's cool. It's another cool shot where it's out of focus. It's focused on the steering wheel, and it's blurred, and you can see the Riddler pulls the tape, starts taping him, and then he pulls out this device, clips it around his neck, and you see the lights, red and blue, start flashing. So, all right, so I had forgot about that scene. I wanted to go back and talk about that because it's very important. So now we're back at the funeral scene. So this guy steps out, and this is the aftermath of that. This guy steps out. He's got the thing around his neck. He's he's his mouth taped up. He has a phone taped to his hand, and he steps out, and everybody's like, "Oh boy!" And then you hear the one guy, "It's a bomb," and everybody's kind of backed up, and everybody's just watching it. It's silent. And all of a sudden, the phone rings, and everybody, and they freak out again because obviously phones are a big trigger for, detonating bombs. We've seen that before. And so everybody freaks out and they say, clear this building out. Everybody get out of here. So everybody leaves. And then it cuts forward however long, maybe an hour or so later. And, they've got this whole place is evacuated. And this guy's just sitting in there, and they have the bomb squad, the little robot comes driving up and looks at him, and it sits up and it's just locked on him. And they're sitting there and they're watching him in this camera. And all of a sudden on the camera, he starts looking. He's looking around, and they're like, what's he looking at? What's he looking at? And then it cuts back in there, and you hear the steps. Again, echoing that opening scene. Awesome. And on the camera, you see Batman come walking out, and they're like, oh, wow, he's there. And the cops that are at the door, they're like, oh, it's Batman. And he comes walking in, and they're like, what is he doing in there? He's going to get himself killed. And he walks up, and he's sitting there, and he pulls the guy's, tape off his mouth. The guy's like, he made me do it. He said he would kill me if I didn't do it. So he's sitting there, and then he opens the card, and it says to the Batman again. He opens it, and it says, something I can't remember, been trying to reach you or something. It says answer. I can't remember how he said it. But it says answer. So he answers the phone, and it's a video chat. And the Riddler sits down across from him, and, they have their conversation. You're a part of this. How am I a part of this? You'll see. And he says, we're going to, I've been abandoned. So long I was hiding in the shadows, but now I'm showing myself. And he says, and the guy turns the phone around, and he says, all right, we're going to play a game. And this is where this is, again, another very, very reminiscent of Saw and kind of a little bit of Ghostface in there, too. I heard another reviewer that I really love talked about how this reminded him of Ghostface with his, trivia, where he's doing the trivia, where on this one, it's riddles, but with Ghostface, it was, what's your favorite scary movie? Who was the killer in the original in the original Friday the 13th, stuff like that. So you kind of get a little bit of that with this moment where he's asking him and doing all these riddles. It can be blind, it can be, harsh, it can be poetic, it can be blind, it can be something. But if it's ignored, only violence will you find, or something like that. And the guy's like, oh, I don't know. And Batman just, it just shows how quick he is. He's justice. So he says, oh, justice. Oh, correct. And the Riddler's doing his thing. He's just all hyper and everything. He's like, all right, if you are justice, what does he say? If you are justice, please do not lie. What is the price for your blind eye? And he says, bribes. And the guy goes, bribes. He goes, how much does it cost? What is the rate? What do you charge? What is your bottom line for a bribe? And the guy's like, what? And, the Riddler's just having a good time. And Batman's like, tell him, how much is it to bribe you? And the guy goes, I don't know, $10,000. He's running his mouth. And the Riddler's just having a ball, and he's laughing. He's enjoying it. He goes, all right, next riddle. And he says, and honestly, when I was listening to his voice, and because obviously his voice is like changed a little bit, and he's got like a little bit of modulation or something on there. I don't know if it is or not, or if it's just Paul Dano, but kind of sounds like there's a little modulation. And the way he was talking and the way his voice tone sounded, he kind of sounded like Ted Levine to me, like Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill. That's who he kind of sounded like to me. And I got thinking, I'd like to see him play a villain in this universe. But anyways, that was just a complete rabbit hole. But so you hear me as his last riddle, and he says it, who basically comes out and says, who's the rat? And so Batman's telling him, who's the rat? Who's the informant? The guy says, I'm not, I can't tell you that. I'm a dead man if I tell you that. And it becomes aware that this thing is so serious, this thing runs so deep, that he would rather have his head blow up than for him to say it, because he says it, I'm a dead man either way. I'd rather die like this because it's just me. If I tell, then my family dies too. So that was another element that just cemented that something serious is going on here. But obviously, it goes down. The clock runs out. And boom! It blows up. Batman flies back and knocks him unconscious. You see the cops just rush in there. They got the gun on Batman. He blacks out. He wakes up later, and he's in the GCPD. He's sitting there, and you hear the cops talking about unmasking. You see one cop reaches for his mask. Batman jumps up. He's attacking these officers or whatever. He's fighting them off. Gordon's trying to keep the peace, and then the one guy says, "Wow, you're really going to cover for this guy, Gordon? This scum? You're really going to cover for this?" And Gordon's just trying. He's trying to play both angles. He's like, "Hey, look, guys. We can handle this. Let's be civil about this." And the guy's like, "It was you. It was all you." And he says, "Yeah." He's like, he would rather die than give up that informant. Who is he afraid of? Is he afraid of you? And then that guy's like, "Wow, how dare you accuse me of being dirty and being like this?" He's in his face. "I got you on assaulting an officer." And he, how about 3 or something like that? I can't remember. Really cool scene between him and the police. And finally, Gordon says, "Give me some time alone. I think he says, 'Give me 5 minutes alone.'" And then the guy says, 2 minutes. So he clears the room. Gordon's in there. And this was, again, another one of the more comedic scenes of the movie, again, from Gordon, where he's trying to appear like he's being threatening and stuff. And he's telling Batman, like he's telling Batman off and stuff. And he's being tough with him. And he's telling him, "We need to get you out of here." And he's doing it all. "We need to get you out of here." And from outside, it looks like he's just really giving Batman a hard time. But he's actually just saying, "We need to get you out." And then Batman's like, "Who's the guy in the mustache?" And he's like, "Man, that's and I don't remember who all he says, but he starts listing off who it is or whatever. And Batman's like, and he's like, "You need to punch me and make a run for the door. Here's the key." And so then they're talking, and then Batman just bop, lays him out, runs. He escapes. You have that cool escape scene where he's running through the hallway, goes up the stairs. The cops are all chasing him. He, grapple hooks up to the top. He runs out, and this is another cool little element where he runs out on the roof. And this is just another little, a little element into this is Batman at the very early stages, because he gets up and he goes off the roof, and then you see this fear go on. Like, oh, oh, I'm on the rooftop. I'm several hundred feet in the air. This is terrifying. And he looks over and he sits there, and all of a sudden he shoots up, and you get this cool element where with the Nolan trilogy, he had the cape, and the cape had that static, that electricity or whatever, the wires on the inside that activate with static or with whatever it was, and opens up and it can become rigid. And that's what he used to fly down. It was almost like it turned into a hand glider. With this one, they used, it was even more practical than that, and they used a flight suit. And that was kind of cool. He hits it, the flight suit comes around, and he just kind of, harnesses it all up, and they come out, and he just falls off, and you get him flying through the city. Really cool. He's coming down. He's coming in hot. There's a bus. There's a bridge. He's going in between. The parachute pulls. Hits the bridge. Bam, bam. And when he hits that, the way he hits it was just like, oh, that hurt, because he wipes out, and he gets up, and he's limping away. Another cool element, you see this Batman, he feels the consequences of what he's doing. He feels that crash. He gets up and he limps off and everything. So that was pretty cool. What was next? I'm trying to think. It wasn't before that. I hooked this up real fast anyways. I think I'm going to take a drink first, too, because I'm starting to get a little scratchy. My throat's getting a little scratchy. Anybody watching, go ahead and comment so far where we're at in the movie and everything, how you felt. Because I gotta clear the pipes a bit. If it's lagging too, I apologize. I'm using a different program than what I normally use. And on mine, I'll watch it right here, and I can monitor it. It's running fine, but I had some people earlier say it was kind of lagging. The voice was choppy or the video was choppy. So if it is, just let me know. There's not much I think I can do anyways, but, I'll see what I can do. But anyway, so yeah, this point into the movie, I mean, obviously it's been flawless at this point. I'm trying to think what was. Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can pull up like a guide because I'm going completely off the top of my head, and that's not exactly helping me when it comes to knowing where everything's at. Okay, so I've talked about that. I'm watching a thing that's kind of got the plot synopsis. So give me just a second. He's running out of the police. Let's see. Okay, let me see here. Okay. So it goes into another meeting of. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry, I blanked completely out. I blanked hard on that one. So, but yeah. So then this is where Batman and Catwoman meet back up, and Batman is, talking to her about their. This isn't after. Okay, so yeah, this is where he starts talking about him and they start going over the clues again, and this is where him and Gordon they kind of talk and they say, okay, let's reinterpret it. Maybe we were wrong on the clues, with it being a rat. Maybe the rat, penguin. Maybe it's talking about penguin, being a, has wings or whatever. He doesn't fly, but maybe it's penguin. So they go to press penguin, and that's what you hear about. And it seems like it's about time for me to make another, to confront penguin again. And this was kind of a cool scene because you get. Actually, this is the scene that I've heard praised the most because they go out there and they see penguin and Gordon's like, what do we do? Do we move in? He's like, let's follow him. So they follow him out to this warehouse where they're kind of doing a drug. They're doing a drug. They got this drug operation running or whatever. And Batman's on the roof and he's talking with Gordon. And Gordon's like, what is it? And Batman says it's a drug operation. It must be, from Maroni's drug operation. And it's still operating. And Gordon's like, wow. And then Batman looks over and he sees Catwoman pulls up and he's like, oh, things just got complicated. And she goes in and I thought it was cool because she has her whip here, which is something that, with Anne Hathaway's Catwoman, which was the last time we saw Catwoman on the big screen, she didn't have the whip. So it was cool to get to see her use that here. And it was very different. It sounded, you didn't get to really see much into the whip, but it sounded like a chain, like it's got like a chain or something on it. It's really cool. And she whips it around, grabs the guy's feet, pulls him down. The other guy's like, what? He walks up. She walks over and she just starts, again, throwing those kicks she dispatches this guy. Really cool. She hits him with a lot of kicks, dispatches him. She walks up, opens the trunk, and she sees all this money, and she starts taking this money. And Batman, behind her, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, is this how you get your kicks, sneaking up on women in the dark? And, he's, kind of dogging on her for taking the money. Is like, is this what this whole thing was about? You just wanted to set up a score, that you just wanted to get this money. And she's like, don't even try to judge me right now. This is not happening right now. And she's opening the bags and she's seeing the money, closing it, throwing it over, opening the bag, sees the money, close it. Then she opens the next bag and it's Annika. And it's her body in there. And she opens it and she sees it and it shocks her. And you see Batman's face and he's shocked too. It's like, whoa. Then all of a sudden the gunfire opens up. Batman, he pulls his cape up, which was kind of a cool detail. He pulls I didn't catch it the first time I watched it. But he pulls his cape up and all those bullets hit that cape pretty much. But then he falls on the ground and he's like, kind of like a little bit out of breath, like, wow, that hurt. you know, and she's sitting there and she takes cover, and Gordon, you know, whips it up there and he pulls up. He takes a few shots. Looks like he takes a guy out. He drops down, and it's just his car is getting pelted with fire. And all of a sudden, you know, the Penguin, you know, he gets his gun. He's like, come on, Vengeance. You know, where you at? And, you know, he's walking up. He walks in. He sees he's gone. And Catwoman's hiding behind the car still. But Batman's gone. And all of a sudden, the scene that everybody has praised, I haven't heard a single negative thing about this scene, is you get, and this is where Derpy Gaming was talking about earlier, the sound design and how you need to see this in theaters to get the full effect for the sound and everything. When you see or when you hear, not necessarily even when you see, but you see the lights come on, and all of a sudden you hear that car fire up. And I myself, I'm not a huge car person. You know, I like cars. You know, I certainly have cars. I've sold cars for years now. You know, I've been in the car sales business for 5 years. So, I'm okay. I'm decent about cars. I don't love them. I don't hate them or anything. But this made somebody who is just kind of, kind of a casual car fan. I love this, and you hear it boom, and it just kind of booms in, and you can hear it building up, and he's revving the engine, and you see, the big jet on the back and the flame, and you see everyone shocked, and Gordon's like, whoa, and Penguin's like, uh-oh, and, and everybody's just kind of freaking out, and you see even like the little vents on the hood, and you see the bright orange in there, and it looks awesome, it sounds even better, and, he jumps it forward, jumps it forward, Penguin makes a run, jumps in the car, he's like, let's get out of here. He peels out. The other guy, he leaves the one guy behind. He's like, hey, he's got all the money. Catwoman starts peeling out too. She knocks the guy down, steals a bag of money, and dips. And you get probably one of the standout sequences of the whole movie is this car chase. And this was the part that I was most excited to talk about when it comes to my review of this film. This was the part I was the most excited for. Because you get this car chase, and the way that's shot is a lot different from your standard car chase. You watch Batman Begins and the first chase with the tumbler, and it's jumping rooftop to rooftop. It's very wide shot. You get wide angles. You see everything. You see it when he powers off and they lose him, and then he, kicks it back on. You see all that. You get to see Batman, and you get to see him do this chase. In this one, and even BVS, you get big wide shots to see what's happening. You see when he hits the ship and the ship falls down, he fires the machine guns and plows out through the front of the ship. You get to see all of that very wide shot. This one is very close up, and it just gives it this more visceral feel. And one thing I like is something that if anybody has been on any forums or anything for fan rights of Batman, or even just comments on a Batman video or something, it's pretty much everywhere, is that fans want to see a Batman movie from the perspective of the criminal, where you get to see Batman be horrifying. You get to see what they see. You got a little bit of it in BVS, and you got a little bit of it at the beginning of this movie, and a little bit in Batman Begins as well, but you really get it in this chase scene, because if you didn't notice it the first time you watched it, when you watch it again, think about it. Most of the whole scene, most of it is shot from the Penguin's perspective. This 90% of this chase is focused on Penguin and seeing Batman in the rear view, or turn around and seeing Batman or something like that. That is how you see most of it. And I thought that made this chase scene even better, because Batman is so terrifying, the thought of being chased down like that. And Penguin, and you can hear it in Penguin in the way he's, this guy's crazy, he's freaking out. The dude he's scared. He's scared to death, because there's this big, this tank of a muscle car just flying up behind him. It's clearly faster. It's clearly stronger and more stout than his, and he can't get away. And that is a terrifying thought. And you get to see it from Penguin's perspective, which is the part I was most excited to talk about on this whole thing. Because you start off, he's driving, and Batman's just creeping up, and he's ramming him in the back, and you get this guy's crazy. And he takes a hard left, and goes down. You see Batman keeps going, and Penguin, he's driving. He thinks he's lost him a little bit. The Batman comes plowing back through the rail, and Penguin's like, oh boy, here we go. So he's driving, and he's just weaving in and out of traffic. They come up. There's a big truck coming on. They're side by side. Penguin's just lighting up his window and everything. It's bulletproof, and he's just lighting it up. And he's just terrified. They look forward. There's a truck coming. They separate. Penguin goes right. Batman has to go around left. And so Penguin gets a little bit of a lead on him, and he's driving. He starts weaving in and out of traffic. And this is where I thought it got the best, because you always see chase sequences like Batman Begins where he's driving, and they're on the highway, and they're weaving in and out, and then they go into the parking garage, and he jumps off the roof, and he's riding the rooftops of the houses. You always get to see something like that, or Batman vs Superman where he's chasing him through these big open lots, these warehouse lots, and everything. You never get to see a chase scene in heavy traffic and in standstill traffic. And that was kind of cool to see. Just going off the top of my head, I can't think of another film that does that, where you have a chase scene that takes place in, start and stop type traffic, a highway that's just, bumper to bumper. You never get to see that. So I thought that was really cool. And you get Penguin, he gets to a standstill, and he's like, come on. He's laying on his horn, and he looks up, and you see Batman in the rear view just creeping up. And so he freaks out, and he gets desperate, and he's like, okay, what do I do? Okay, so then he rams forward and plows through this guy, and he gets over. Batman's still on his tail. So then he just and he slams on his brakes, and the semi rear ends him and starts to twist forward, and he twists. And then it starts to fall over, and then it causes the other ones, and then it causes this big pile up. Batman's caught under it. He starts ramming through to get, he's getting rear-ended and stuff, and he's driving, and all of a sudden you see, and I thought it was cool, and actually I didn't notice it, and then I saw someone else point it out. And so when I watched it the second time, I looked for it, and I saw it. The big, you get the big tanker truck, and on it's got a big A. And you can imply that that's probably Ace Chemicals, which is just another cool little nod. But it falls over, boom, explosion. Right before that, you see the ramp, like the car ramp. And Batman takes it, boom, huge explosion. You get Penguin, I got you, you freak. Or was it, I got you freaking nut job, or whatever he says. I can't even remember. And he's like happy, yes, it got away. And all of a sudden, Batman comes through the fire and lands, and he sees it. And you see his face in the terror, and then hits him. Penguin flips, and this is a brutal crash, man. He's flipping all over the place, and he comes to a stop, and he's hanging there upside down, and he looks, and you see Batman. You get that awesome shot where Batman's walking in front of the fire, and it's upside down, and he walks up, and the music's swelling as he walks up, and he gets there, and he just looks at him, and I thought that was just a beautifully shot scene. The whole scene in general, definitely one of the most riveting scenes of the whole movie. Just excellent. I haven't heard a single negative thing from anybody about this scene. So, definitely the standout of the movie, in my opinion, and for a lot of people. This one and one other one, and we'll get there. So they take Penguin, they interrogate him under this bridge, and they're like, are you the rat? And he's like, whoa, why would I be the rat? And they're talking, and he says, El Rata Alada. He goes, El Rata Alada. He said, that's the worst Spanish I've ever heard. What are you, the two, world's greatest minds here, and you don't even know how to speak Spanish or simple Spanish, whatever. He's really, and again, like I said earlier, where the movie doesn't have much very many comedic moments, but you get a few, and what few you do have, a lot of them, like I said earlier, was Gordon. I think the other ones are definitely Penguin. They're the two funniest characters in the movie, and Penguin has a lot of them, and he's sitting there, and he's just really giving them a hard time about their Spanish, like, that's the worst Spanish I've ever heard. And, he's doing his thing, and he says, it's you are El Rata Alada, or whatever. And Batman, they're like, what? You think it was a mistake? Batman's, he doesn't make mistakes. And he says and thinks you are El Rata Alada, and he thinks websites. So they Google it, pulls up, they start talking with Riddler. Riddler's like, hey, did you figure it out? And he says, is it Penguin? He says, I guess I'm going to have to show you a little more. And he says, my next victim, I guess, will show you more. And he's like, victim? He's like, is he dead? And he says he will be soon or whatever. And he, starts, pressing him, and he gives him another riddle, and he says the weed one where he says, I grow like, I'm like a seed, grow like a weed, and whatever. I don't remember the exact riddle, but then Batman says an orphan. He's an orphan. So he types in an orphan, and then Riddler signs off. And so Batman thinks the orphanage, the old, Wayne Manor was turned into the orphanage. Let's go there. So they go over there. They leave Penguin there, which you get another cool little nod where they've got his hands and feet zip tied, and he comes waddling out like a penguin, and he's yelling at them, how are you going to leave me out here, you lunatics, and stuff like that. And he's just yelling. I'm giving them a hard time. Then they show up to this orphanage, and it's all dark, and it's run down and everything. And Batman, they open the door. And again, one of the other more comedic moments of the movie where they open it up. They both have their light. Gordon pulls his gun up, and Batman says, "No guns." And Gordon says, "Hey, man, that's your thing." Another little comedic moment. Then you get some more horror moments where you see the guy. You get the creepy little jump scare sound effect where you see the guy, and then he dips off to the side, and they run over, and they see it's a bunch of junkies, and they're like, "Oh, it's drop heads." And then they hear Ave Maria playing, and you hear the crowd. They're like, no, I don't think you hear the song playing, but you do hear the crowd clapping, and you hear cheering and stuff, and they're like, what is that? And they start walking forward, and it says, where it all began, spray painted on the door. Open it up, projector playing Thomas Wayne's speech. And, he's talking about renewal. And he says, this is where it all started. The renewal fund was supposed to help us. This is where we, this is where it was all supposed to help us, and they left us to die. Everyone, and he implies that Thomas Wayne might have been dirty, and he might have been crooked. And then they start, more and more clues sends the father and everything, and Batman puts it together that the next target is Bruce Wayne, and he's like, oh no, Alfred. And so Gordon's like, what do you think this means? And he turns around and he looks, and he sees that Batman's gone. And he's like, hey, where'd you go? And then it cuts, and Batman's in his car, and he's flying, and he's calling. And he's like, come on, Alfred, pick up the phone. And you get this brilliantly edited scene, which is very reminiscent of like the Saw movies, where you saw, especially Saw 2 did this for the whole movie. If you were to condense it down for one scene, this is kind of a cool little editing moment where you see Alfred, and he's opening mail, and you hear the phone ringing. And Bruce is like, pick up, come on, Alfred, pick up. And you see Alfred opens up a package that says for Bruce Wayne's eyes only. He opens it up. There's a box. And on this box it says for the Batman. There's a note that says for the Batman, and it's in a flammable, or it's in a, not flammable, it's in a fire resistant, a fireproof case. And it says fireproof on it. He's like, what? And he flips the box over and sees the light flashing. And Batman's calling. All of a sudden, someone picks up the phone, and it's that Dorothy, I think was her name. She picks up the phone, and he's like, hey, give the phone to Alfred. Something bad's about to happen. She says, I'm afraid it already has. And it's like, what? You're watching, it's like, what? And then it's an hour ago. And then Bruce Wayne comes under the bridge, and he sees Wayne Towers on fire. And then you get the rest of that shot rest of that sequence where Alfred throws it, and he tries to take cover, and the explosion goes off. And I had this moment where I was like, okay, we just come off of No Way Home in December, where they killed off Aunt May, and No Way Home was very well received. I was like, there's no way that they kill off Alfred, right? There's no way they kill off Alfred. But it kind of had that doubt, like, did they just kill off Alfred? And Bruce Wayne, and he's standing there, and he's, got his, he's all distressed and everything. He's standing there, and they say this was with it. And he opens up, this is for the Batman. And he opens it up, and it's got, the owl eyes, which I thought was creepy. And it to me, I say owl eyes. It may not have been owl eyes, but that's what I thought when I saw it. Again, another little nod for the Court of Owls, which also was on the first card, the owl and everything. But then you get Bruce, he goes, and he's at the hospital, and Alfred's in critical condition. He's sitting there, and he's watching him, and the nurse says, does he have any next of kin? Anybody to call? Bruce says, nope, just me. And very, very good scene for that too. And it sets up one of the more emotional scenes of the movie. But so Bruce, he's kind of brooding or whatever. He meets with Catwoman again, and he confronts her about, the money and everything that she took earlier. And he's like, so was that just you just set that up to score some money? Is that what this whole thing was about? Just trying to get your next score and everything like that. She said, no, he owes me that money. He's like, what is it? How could he possibly owe you that money like that? And he's really laying into her and giving her a hard time. And she reveals that Falcone is her dad. And her mom used to work at the club, and her dad, they had her, and she was born, and then her mom was killed, possibly by some junkie, that choked her out, someone in the club. And, and then right after that, Falcone just abandoned her. And so you get that little bit of character like that. It's like, wow, this just took a turn, and she's like, he owes me that money. And it was like, okay, Catwoman, it more than meets the eye here. And which we all knew, there was something going on, but, it was cool to hear it, actually come out into the open and everything. So then you get the scene where right after this, I'm trying to think of how it played out exactly in chronological order. You get the scene where Batman, sees the video about Thomas Wayne that's going viral from the Riddler. And they're like, this has already gotten, I don't remember how many, they said like 15 million views or something crazy. And, I wish my videos would do that. But the Riddler, he posts the video and it's like one of those conspiracy type videos where he's got the things and he's like, and what did this mean? And you find out that, Martha Wayne, her mom, she had a troubled past, or it was a murder-suicide with her parents. She was in and out of institutions and for her mental illness. And Thomas Wayne, when he was running for mayor, tried to cover it up. He kept that hush-hush, and you get that big bold letters that says hush. Really cool, another little nod to the, comic of Hush. And, but he, tried to, cover it up. And then there's this really ambitious reporter who was digging in, and he found out, and he was about to come clean with it. And Thomas Wayne got with Falcone and said, and he had him killed. Or he tried to pay him off, and the guy wouldn't take it, so he had him killed. And Bruce is just like, what? What is this? So he shows up at the Iceberg Lounge again, and he as just Bruce Wayne. And it's funny because the first time he shows up as Batman, they open the door and he says, you know who I am? They're like, yeah. They shut the door and they come back out, and then they attack. He drops on both and walks in. This time, Bruce Wayne shows up, and he says the same. They open it, and he goes, you know who I am? And they say, yeah. So they're like, Bruce Wayne, wow. So then they let him in, and he walks in, and he meets with Carmine. And they have this talk, and it almost paints Carmine in a very sympathetic light. Like, he really cared for Thomas Wayne. And, that's how it kind of paints it, and he's like, he was a friend, and, he needed help. They were about to destroy his life, and he needed help. And this reporter was a Maroni guy. He was in bed with the Maronis. So, Thomas come to me and said, I want you to put the fear of God in him. And he went to, do that. But when the fear of God doesn't work, you have to escalate it. He takes it to the next level. And implying that, they killed him like that. And Thomas, was just okay with it. And then he says after that, and then Maroni found out, and he was afraid that Thomas would win and be in my pocket. So Maroni had him whacked. And Bruce is like, Maroni killed my dad? And Falcone's like, yeah, that's what I think anyways. And so then they have like this pretty good moment together. And then Bruce goes back to the hospital with Alfred. Alfred wakes up and he's, you lied to me, Alfred. All these years, I've been fighting for my dad, in the memory of my dad. And this whole time he was dirty. Like, why didn't you tell me that? And he's, Alfred's like, no, your dad was a good man. He made a mistake. And Bruce, like, he had a man killed. He said he did not have a man killed. He did try to pay the guy hush money, and he did consult with Carmine to scare him. But when Carmine killed the guy, Thomas couldn't live with it, and he tried to come clean. And he said, I'm coming clean. I'm going to the police. I can't live with, that, having that on my conscience. and that night he was killed. And Bruce is like, so Falcone killed my dad, and Alfred said, I wish I knew the answer to that. Whether it was Falcone or if it was just some junkie who got scared and pulled the trigger too fast. Really cool, great scene. And Bruce, Alfred's like, I wanted to be. I know I tried to be a dad to you, but I couldn't be a dad to you. I can teach you to fight, but I couldn't be a dad to you. And he's emotional and he's crying. And Andy Serkis plays it beautifully. And then Robert Pattinson plays great too, because then his Bruce Wayne, he's sitting there and he says, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of anything. I've never felt fear like I did that day when I lost everybody that I loved. And he said, until today, and I felt it again. And implying, he felt, that same feeling, of his parents dying when he thought he lost Alfred too. And they have this beautiful moment where Alfred reaches out his hand and Bruce grabs his hand, and they just have this great moment. Again, like I said at the beginning, how this is a Bruce Wayne origin story, and he has his arc where he starts off, he's purely vengeance, and then he gets his moment where he saves the kid instead of going after Riddler. And this is his next real moment where he has that moment of reconciliation with Alfred and acceptance with Alfred. And I hope with future installments we get to see that relationship develop a lot more and get to be that more buddy cop aspect that we've grown to know and love with Bruce and Alfred. Not necessarily buddy cop, but kind of in the same nature. So then he looks up, he sees the light, he goes up there, and he goes out there, and he sees Gordon outside. He's like, I thought that was you. And Gordon's like, I thought that was you. They go up. Catwoman's up there just annihilating this guy. And, they're like, hey, what are you doing? Stop. And he had her kidnapped, and, she tried to call me. She tried to call me, and she left the message, and I listened to it. And they find out that Carmine was the one that, killed Annika. And you hear it, and it's chilling. Hearing the audio where he's talking to her and he's being all sweet. He's like, go on, it's okay. It's okay. And then all of a sudden you hear her scream and he's got his hands around her throat. And he's choking her, and you even have Gordon say, oh, he's strangling her. Like that. And Batman, you can see Batman's just kind of enraged by it. And someone who I haven't talked about was Zoe Kravitz. I was very nervous about Zoe Kravitz, when I heard she was cast. I haven't seen her in much, but what I have seen her in, I've always found her as kind of wooden. I never saw her as a really great actress. And I don't know much about her. I haven't seen her in much. But I was just kind of nervous about it. And I was hopefully optimistic, or cautiously optimistic, where I was like, I hope she's good. I really hope she's good. I want her to knock it out of the park. I'm just kind of nervous that she might not. That it might be wooden, and that it might be too exaggerated or something. She knocked it out of the park. She's one of the standouts to me. You had, Colin Farrell and Zoe Kravitz as being the two standouts this week for me. And everybody was great. So that just shows you how great those two were for me. And right here, Zoe Kravitz is at her best in the whole movie, the way she plays this. And she's sitting there and, she's emotional, and he killed her, and she's got the gun. She's about to kill him. Batman slaps the gun down, and he's like, no, you're not going to kill him or whatever. And she's like, he has to pay. And Batman, they find out that this guy, he says it, we work for Falcone, because they're like, Falcone works for you, like that. He's the rat. He works for you. And he says, no, we work for him. And you find out that the whole office has been in Falcone's pockets, and Batman refuses to let her kill him. And she's like, he's going to walk. He almost kind of like a Mace Windu. He's too dangerous to be left alive. That's how she's kind of, comes across right here, where she's like, this guy, this city's too far gone to put our faith in the justice system and let this guy live. He needs to be killed here. And Batman's like, no, we need to handle this right. We need to do this the right way. And so then you get, again, another glimpse into the Catwoman character, how I said earlier, how, one of the key, the defining things about Catwoman is that she has her mission, and she is a good person at heart. She wants to do the right thing. She loves helping Batman, but she will betray him at any moment for her mission. And you see that beautifully represented here, where she bolts. She runs, dives off the building, and goes after. She's going after Falcone. Batman looks at. He's like, I have to go after her, and Gordon's like, I'll go with you. He's like, no, I have to do this my way. And he hands him the phone and says, bring the rat into the light, which was the clue that they had gotten earlier. And so, Batman, you get another awesome sequence. Another one of the cool sequences of this film, where she goes in, she infiltrates, she goes up, and she wants to speak with Carmine. And so she goes up there, and she's playing it perfectly. She's crying, she's emotional. She's like, I don't know where Annika is, and I feel something bad's happened to her. And Carmine is so slimy. He's like, it's okay. Knowing what this guy did, too. And he's trying to comfort her. He's like, it's okay. I'm sure she's fine. And then you get to see, so we've seen Bruce and Batman show up to the door of this club twice now. And he did it pretty much the same way every time, you know who I am. And the first time he just brute forces. The second time he just kind of, you know who I am, and he just kind of gets through on his own merit. This time he knocks on the door, the guy's open, and he's not there, and he sneaks in. Really, really cool. It was kind of funny, to see it happen that way, and he shuts the guy out. He runs in there, goes, and he's just Bruce Wayne here. He's got the disguise. It's a little easier to be discreet, when you're not in a 6'5" bat costume. So he goes off, a guard follows him, and he gets like the little 1-2 boxing combination, which was kind of cool. And he goes in and he starts cutting the power. And then you find out that Gordon leaked that phone call, that voicemail to the news. And Carmine and his right-hand man are watching it on the news, and while they're watching it, Catwoman just changes completely. She's crying, Annika, I don't know if she's okay. They walk away, and all of a sudden she goes straight-faced, gets the gun ready, and she walks in there. Hey, Dad. They turn around, and she says, and I forget her mom's name is Maria something, I think. And he's like, put down the gun. And, right before she fires, the lights go out, and she misses her shot. And then it cuts, and you see now Bruce is in the Batman costume, and he's headed up there. And he goes up through the elevator shaft. And then, you see Catwoman, and she's going around this apartment, and she's trying to find these guys, and she's fighting these guys. And she has a really cool little exchange with one of the henchmen that was with Falcone, where, she, lands a couple of kicks on him, but he's still, obviously he's stronger than her, he's overpowering her, so she has to outsmart him. And she has a cool move where, he's got her, she's got him by the arms, she drops down all body weight and slides under and pulls him, and his face hits the counter. Very cool move, very cool display of, fighting smarter. And because she obviously couldn't overpower this guy, so it was cool to see her fight with her brain. And so she's hunting Carmine down. She's about to kill this guy. And you get another one of the coolest moments for Batman, where the elevator door opens up, the lights are out, the elevator comes up, and I couldn't help but think, this is another hallway scene. We had Darth Vader's hallway scene, Luke Skywalker's hallway scene. Now we're getting a Batman hallway scene. This is a time to be alive. And I love this scene. They walk up, the elevator door opens, no one's on there. They walk in there, he's got the light. Batman's in the corner, drops down. You only see what happens by the muzzle flash. So every time the muzzle flash, you see Batman, and he's just just dismantling these guys. It's really cool. And meanwhile, Carmine has knocked Selena onto the ground. He's got a pole, and he's strangling her. And she starts to cut his face, but he's got her, and he's strangling her, and she's about to die. And he's so soft-spoken. He's like, you did this. This is your fault. And he's so creepy and just very slimy and evil the way he's delivering his lines. And then Batman comes in there, pulls him up, bop, drops him one hit, and he picks her up, and she goes for the gun, goes to shoot him. He goes, no. He pulls it down, and he's fighting with her, and he's just holding her. And she goes, he has to pay. And he says the great line, which is, again, another great Batman line, where he says, you don't have to pay with him. Great. And, again, this is just more insight to that arc that Batman and Bruce Wayne are on, and that origin story for Bruce Wayne, where, again, he started out as just pure vengeance. Everybody's afraid of him. He saved the kid instead of getting the Riddler. He, I can't even think of the other one that I used, the other example I used. But then now he is telling her, he's telling her not to be vengeance. He's choosing to not be vengeance here, and he's choosing to be an extension of justice, which is a really cool moment. You know, again, just another hint into the arc that he's on in this movie. They take him out, they take him outside. You know, Penguin's like, "Oh, you rat," you know, and you see they have an exchange, and you know, Penguin, you know, Carmine kind of gets him riled up, and he pulls a gun, and the way it's edited is cool because you hear a shot, you never see a shot. Carmine goes down. Penguin had just pulled a gun. You think it's Penguin, but he's yelling, "I didn't shoot. I never shot." And Batman turns around, and he looks up, and Carmine dies. He looks up, and he sees the Riddler in the window. He goes, "There he is." And Gordon's like, "What?" And, you know, the cops show, "There he is up there." And Batman goes up there. Riddler's gone. He's looking around, and they're like, "Hey, he's been here the whole time." And, you know, Batman, you know, they find a little letter or whatever, another, you know, one to Batman, and it says, "My confession," or something like that. And like, what is he confessing to? You know, we already know what he did. What's he confessing to? I actually think I skipped forward because then they find out, you know, they get a call and says, "Hey, we saw a guy leave that room, and he's sitting in the diner right now. He's sitting here in the diner." And they're like, "Let's go get him. That's the Riddler." They get him. They arrest him. They take him back, and then we have that scene where they're searching through the apartment. You see the cops still really don't want him there, but you see they're a little more accepting of it. And then, you know, the bat's in the cage. He finds the note, "My confession." Hey, he's asking for you. He goes out there, and you get a really cool scene between Batman and Riddler here, where Batman at first, he's just real quiet, and he's standing there. And it hints that Riddler might know Batman's identity. And he's saying, "Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne." You know, and Batman's sitting there, and he's looking up at the camera, and he's thinking, "Man, my identity's about to be outed. This is it." And then, you know, Riddler's like, "That's the only one we didn't get." And then Batman's like, "Oh, he doesn't know who I am." So then he's intrigued, and Batman walks towards him, and they start talking. He's like, "We did this together." And you find out that Riddler's whole thing was he saw Batman trying to clean up the crime. He couldn't do it, and he felt like he needed to help. So he goes after the big fish. He brings them out. Batman takes them down. And that was, or other way around. Batman brings them out. Riddler takes them down. He says, "We're a great team. Look what we have done. We've taken down, you know, Carmine Falcone. We've you know, uncovered all of this corruption. We have done so much good here." And Batman's like, "We are not a team." But again, it's just an insight of the consequences of Batman's actions of wanting to be only vengeance, you know, and him wanting to be just this brooding, you know, dark force that strikes fear into the criminals and into the people of Gotham to not do crime. This is a consequence of that. You know, Riddler is directly built, or he was directly made from Batman's actions. And he sees that, and he tells him, you know, "We're not working together. Me and you aren't a thing. You are a crazy, you're a psychopath, and you've done this." And Riddler's like, "Oh no, this is not how this was supposed to go." Again, Paul Dano really, really shined in this role, and I wasn't aware of who Paul Dano was. When I heard Paul Dano, I was like, I don't know. I Googled him, looked at him, I was like, he doesn't look familiar. Then I found out he's the guy from Prisoners, and I was like, oh, that guy's Riddler. Okay. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then when I saw him in this movie, I was like, oh, he's fantastic. Well, everybody did an amazing job in this movie. And this moment, you know, Riddler's like, "Oh, we were supposed to be in here and we could watch it all together." And Batman's like, "What are we watching?" He's like, "Oh, you're not as smart as I thought you were. You know, there's a whole nother plan. You know, there's a whole another step in my plan that hasn't even come to fruition yet. I thought you figured it out. You're not as smart as I thought you were." So Batman, you know, that bugs him. He goes back to the apartment. You know, he's looking for clues. And this is another cool moment. You know, the cop's like, "Hey, you know, you can't be in here." And he looks at him. And they have this stare off for a second, and then the cop just accepts it. Batman starts touching the evidence. He's like, "Hey, don't touch the evidence." And then Batman looks at him. They look at each other, and then they just accept it. And they start talking. They start having a conversation. The guy's like, "Yeah, my dad was a carpet guy. He installed carpets. That's a tool for carpet." Batman realizes this is a carpet tool. So then he looks down, and they're standing on carpet. So he throws everything around. The cop's like, "Oh, I'm about to get in trouble." And Batman just uses that tool. He pries the carpet off, and the guy's like freaking out. The cop doesn't want this to happen. But there's a whole map of Gotham on the ground, and it says "a real change." And Batman's like, what? What is this? So he goes over, and earlier they had opened a computer, and there was a video that he had streamed, and there was like 500 people that saw it, but it was encrypted, and they didn't have a way to break it. They were trying to break it, but there was no, they had to, use more resources to break it. Well, they read that. Batman's like, I bet this is it. So he types it in. Perfect. That was the password. It watches the video, and all of a sudden you realize what the rest of Riddler's plan is, and that he has all of these people, all these followers that are ready to pick up the mantle and carry out the rest of Riddler's plan, because he planned, I'm already going to be in jail. So now it's on you to finish my plan. And that was really, really cool element, and you get to see, all these people in their comment in, what gauge, what caliber, what are we doing? How are we doing this? And, people are like, rifles are good, make sure to bring your sling and all kinds of stuff. And they had this cult going on, and it's like they're about to do something big. And then Riddler says, I've placed, 7 explosives around the city along the seawall. And, at whatever time he says they're going to explode and the water's going to flood in. And, they look down, and it's all marked on this map. The wall explodes, boom, water comes rushing in. People on the street don't have time to evacuate. The ones that do are going to flood into the garden, and that's when all of you are going to do your thing. You're just going to unleash. You're going to kill the mayor. You're going to kill other officials, and you're just going to fire into this crowd and kill as many people as you can. Batman realizes it. They try to get Gordon on the phone, but it's too late, so they have to get there and do something. And then you see Gordon, it cuts over to Gordon. They have everybody rushed into the garden, as a kind of like a safe haven. They're like, all right, everybody get in here. We're going to coop up in here and try to maybe wait this out, maybe, fix this that way. He tries to get the mayor out of there. It's not safe. She refuses. She's like, no, why is everyone, always want to run? We have to stand and fight. And she walks out there to give a speech. Bow, shot. They realize there's shooters up on the little rafters thing. They pull him apart. Gordon pulls his gun. He's just about to fire, and he realizes. And this is where I said the Batmobile chase, the chase scene in the middle of this movie was the standout moment. This is the other one that rivals that for me as far as standout moments. It's like these two moments are neck and neck. And all of a sudden, the glass explodes from the top, and Batman drops through the roof, and you get this awesome action scene where Batman's taking these guys out. And I was watching it, and when I watched it the first time, I thought it. Afterwards, I was like, what? That kind of seemed like this. And then when I watched it the second time, it just reinforced it. That this scene, it feels like a level in an Arkham game. It feels like it was ripped straight out of Arkham. Like this should be an Arkham level where he drops in, he's fighting these guys, he's dispatching them, he's using his gadgets, he's jumping from rafter to rafter, taking these guys out, and the way he's moving looks like the Arkham game. He's jumping, he's doing a lot of jump moves, jumping from person to person, and it was just really cool to see. As a huge fan of the games, this was the most Arkham thing to ever happen in a Batman movie, and I loved it. And he's doing all this. He fought, the thing, a stray bullet hits the cable, the thing falls. He's hanging on the side. They're just open fire on him. He blows up he puts a little explosive on the fire extinguisher. It goes up everywhere. It clouds everybody up. He comes diving through the smoke on these people, and he's just dispatching guys left and right. And he's about to take them all out. He's got one guy on the ground. He walks to finish his job, and the dude rolls over with a double barrel and both barrels to the chest, and sends Batman flying back, knocks the wind out of him. He's hanging, he's hanging off. He's knocked the wind out. The guy's barely hanging on to consciousness. He's hanging there, and the guy's all creepy walking up, pulls the shell out, puts another one in, and puts the gun right to his head. Batman's sitting there, and I can't help but think that Batman just kind of didn't move. Obviously, he couldn't. There wasn't much he could do. He was barely hanging on anyways. But he's sitting there, and it's almost like it looks like he kind of sees what's happening, because then Catwoman jumps down and saves his life. And obviously earlier too, I forgot to mention it, but earlier you see Catwoman. She sees Batman up there, and she decides to help him. Gordon sees Batman up there and decides to help him. He's like, how do I get up there? So this trio here are all coming together, to work as a team. And Catwoman saves her. She kicks the guy off. She helps pull Batman up. She's laying there, and he's he's out of it. And she's like, it's okay. It's finished. You know, you did it. You saved you took out all the guys. You know, it's okay. You know, just you can rest now. She kisses him. They have a nice little moment. And, you know, Batman's just out of it. And then the guy that she kicked off of him gets up, grabs her, he throws her on the ground, and he's about to kill her. He's strangling her, and Batman, he's trying to get up, and he can't. He's tense. You see his eyes. And all of a sudden, you get this really cool moment where he reaches, he pulls something out of it. He pulls this green vial off of his suit. And he opens up a little patch, jabs himself, and he injects it. And I remember I was watching it, and my dad was sitting beside me, and you know, he's a big Call of Duty fan. He yelled, "Stem shot." You know, he stem shotted, and it was just a shot of it. And at first, I thought, you know, this is just a shot of adrenaline, you know, he just give himself adrenaline. But I heard some other people say some things that were very interesting, that the green color almost alluded to the fact that it could be, you know, Venom, the Venom serum. Obviously, if you like the Nightfall comic, you know, Batman kind of gets addicted to the Venom serum, everything, because it's, you know, it makes him stronger. It makes him, you know, it gives him the strength he needs to do some of the things he wants to do. And so, and then obviously Venom, you know, Bane gets on the Venom and he breaks his back and everything, you know. But it almost seems like a little nod to that storyline, you know, where he takes it and he jabs it in his leg. It's green. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to say yes or no. I think it's a cool nod either way. But yeah, so you have that. And then Batman just goes berserk. He tackles the guy and he starts bashing his face in with no self-control whatsoever. They pull him off. They pull the mask off, and this guy's face is messed up. And they ask him, they're like, "Who are you? You're a nobody." And the guy says, "Me? I'm vengeance." And Batman, you see it really hits Batman. And like I said in the beginning, you know, where you have the parallels between Batman and the Riddler, where the mask even kind of looks similar. Riddler even says he loves his mask. He tried to mimic his mask a little bit. It's not as good, but it still does the same thing. And you know, the scene where they're both stalking, you know, Riddler stalks the mayor in his house and Batman's stalking Catwoman in hers. There's so many mirror images of Batman and his villains all throughout the movie. And then you get it culminate to where even the villain is saying Batman's line, where "I'm vengeance." And Batman realizes the image that he has built and what it has done to these people. And you know, it really hits him hard, and then all of a sudden, it quickly goes to the next scene where you see obviously the water is bursting in and it's filling up, and then one of the electric cables, is swinging over the water. There's still electricity, so if it touches that water, everybody in that water is dead. Obviously, anybody who knows, electricity travels very fast, very, very potent through water, and so anybody in that water, that cable hits it, they're all dead. So Batman's like, I have to do something now. Swings over, lands, he grabs the cable, pulls his little bat knife off thing, cuts it, it jolts him, he falls into the water. The score is beautiful here. And the cinematography is too, with the red and blue lighting from the police car as he falls into that water. Really cool shot. Batman bursts up out, looks over, and he sees people are trapped under the fallen debris and stuff from the rafters and everything, like the water knocked over. And so he goes over there and he moves some stuff off, and the people there are people over there trying to come out, and they see Batman walk up and they all back away. And you see that the people are still scared of Batman. And he pulls off some stuff and he ignites a flare and he's holding it up and he reaches his hand out. And this is where Batman has truly made his arc. The arc has fully come where this is where Batman, you know, in everything we see, Batman, his thing is he takes out criminals. The Dark Knight trilogy, he's taking out criminals. In, you know, BVS, he's taking out criminals. In the Burton movies and the Schumacher movies, he takes out criminals. It is very, very rare to see Batman save people. Just save people. You know, Spider-Man, you get to see Spider-Man save people all the time. You know, Spider-Man 2, the kids, you know, walking in the street, the vehicle's about to hit them, Spider-Man drops the pizza, swings down, saves them. Don't play in the street, and he leaves. You know, or you get to see him dive into a burning building to save a kid or save an old lady or a lady's baby. You know, you get to see these moments of Spider-Man just being heroic. You get to see Superman be heroic. He catches a falling rocket with these astronauts in it, and he drops it to safety. He pulls a crashed ship across the water and saves the crew. Aquaman, you get to see him save a guy who's sinking into the water. You know, you get to see all these heroes be heroic, except for Batman. Batman's thing is taking out criminals. You never get to see him be a hero. And I have never had a problem with that. That's not something I ever knew that I needed. You know, I never thought to myself, you know, watching The Dark Knight, oh, this is good, but I wish he would just do something heroic. You know? I wish he would just, you know, go into a burning building to save a kid. I wish he would just do something like that. Everything he does is response to a criminal doing something. You know, saving Rachel from falling off the building. The Joker threw her off. He's cleaning up the Joker. Saving Gordon's son he's saving from Harvey Dent. He tackles Harvey Dent off the roof to save Gordon's son. It's always Batman taking a criminal out to save somebody else. And I've always been okay with that. This is the first time we get to see Batman save people where no bad guys are involved. He offers his hand. And that, to me, that was something I never knew I wanted to see until I saw it. And I said, this is amazing. This has officially become my favorite Batman movie. That's all I need. Once I saw that, I said, this is now my favorite Batman movie. The rest of it, you know, we've seen elements of it in all the other movies. This is the thing that sets it above every other Batman movie. He's saving somebody. And I love this scene. He reaches his hand out. Nobody takes it. Nobody wants to take it. Everybody's afraid of him. And all of a sudden, that kid that he saved in the beginning, and he made eye contact with, and he connected with, that kid comes up and takes his hand, and he pulls him out. And all of a sudden, then the mayor comes up and takes his hand. And then the other people start coming out. And then the people that were helping that stepped away begin to join in and help Batman help other people. And Batman just holds that light up, and he's walking and he's leading these people out of the darkness. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scene with zero dialogue. It is my favorite scene of the movie, is this sequence here, because it set this movie apart from all the others, from all the other Batman iterations. This is the one where he got to stand out and be his own. And I love it. I absolutely loved it. And then you get to see it even compounds it. You know, you get the awesome Nirvana, you know, Something in the Way, guitar starts playing again, and you get the, Bruce Wayne narration over the top, and he's like, I get it now. That's basically what he says. I get it now. I've been trying to clean the city up by being vengeance, and I see that vengeance now is not the way to do it. I have to inspire hope. I have to do it. And that's what this narration says. I get it now. That's his full arc from beginning to end. He says, now I understand. Beautiful scene. And then it's even compounded, he's carrying people. And again, this is what I'm saying. You get to see him be a hero. He's working with the first responders. They're helping people, they're airlifting people. It shows Batman carrying a woman, and he carries her over and lays her on the stretcher, and they're buckling her in to airlift her out. He sits her down, and she doesn't want to let him go because she feels safe with Batman. And he puts his hand on hers, and he just gives her a nod, like it's going to be okay. And she lets go. They airlift her out, and he watches her. And it mirrors the shot from the beginning, because at the beginning, you get the same shot of him looking up at the bat signal right after he just terrified a bunch of criminals and an innocent civilian. He terrified them. And he looks up like that, and now you get the mirror image where now he has inspired hope, and he's looking up the exact same way. I thought it was beautiful. And then you get my least favorite scene in the movie. And this one, after I watched it the first time, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm being a little too harsh. Maybe it was a little too heavy-handed for me, and I wasn't ready for that on first watch. On second watch, I liked it less. And I think every time I watch it, I'm going to like it less. And that is the scene in Arkham Asylum with Riddler. He sees that, on the TV it shows Batman helps, Batman Vigilante saves people or whatever it says. I can't remember. He saves hundreds. And, Riddler's like, no, my plan, I wanted to, bring the city to its knees, and Batman, foiled that, and he's upset. And then you hear the voice. And I don't want to be that guy who has a judgment for a character right off the bat, so I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be that guy. Because we only got to see like 2 minutes, if that, with this character. But for that 2 minutes, I thought this scene was so irrelevant. And I get it. I've listened to Matt Reeves talk about it, and he says he cut it out once and he screened it without it. But after he watched it all together without that scene, it lost some of the impact of the next scene. So he put it back in. And my problem isn't the scene itself. I think the scene could have worked. It's just the way the scene is executed. It felt so on the nose, so forced. And I thought, wow, the scene didn't need to be here. And even if you had this scene here, it could have been different. You know, with the scene, with Batman Begins, when they tease the Joker, Gordon says, there's this guy, he's been knocking off banks, and he leaves his calling card. And Batman, he flips it over and it says Joker. I'll look into it. And then that's it. I think with something more on the line, I'm not saying it had to be that, but with something more on those lines, I think this scene would have worked. Or it's just a little wink. But this scene's not just a wink. This scene is a whole spoonful of here's what's coming. And I felt like it was very unnecessary. It's my only negative with this movie. And it's not really a negative. It's more of just a mixed where it doesn't take away from the movie at all. Obviously, the movie is my favorite Batman movie of all time. So it doesn't take away from the movie at all for me. I think it could have been done better. And so for me, that's a mixed. And when I heard the laugh, the voice and the laugh, it felt very forced. It didn't sound natural. Obviously, like I said, I'm going to reserve judgment. We got just a tiny bit, so I'm going to reserve judgment but from what I heard, I was not a fan. So you get that scene, it's blink and you miss it. It's so small. And so, oh well, that's without it. So anyways, we move on from that, and you get the scene between Catwoman and Batman, and they're talking, and she says, basically she's saying, come away with me. I'm going to go up to Bloodhaven, and I'm going to be, I'm going to do some stuff there. Maybe, why don't you come with me? We can be the Bat and the Cat. It's got a nice ring to it. Very, very nice moment. I love the relationship between Batman and Catwoman in this movie. Very reminiscent of, like I said, of Hush, and I loved it. I thought their chemistry was great, and you really get to see it here. And, he sits there for a second, and he looks up, and you see the bat signal in the sky, and then she turns around and sees it. She goes, who am I kidding? You're already spoken for. Gotham already has your heart. And they have this great moment where they're embraced, and they're about to kiss, and she just they pull away. And she gets on her bike, she drives off, he gets on his and follows her, and you have the cool shot of them riding together, and they're taking over, one passes the other, and they're kind of going back and forth. And they ride together as the music plays. They come up to this crossroads, and she goes right, and he goes left. Or maybe it's the other way around. I can't remember. But either way, one goes one way, and the other goes. And actually, you're probably getting it reversed because my camera I'm watching it up here. It's different over here, so I probably look like I don't know my rights and lefts. But but anyways, she goes right, he goes left, whichever. And they're driving away. He looks down in the rear view and he sees her driving off, and he looks back up, and it cuts, and that's the movie. And then you get some credits, and then after credits, you get the little question mark flash, and then it says goodbye, and then it flashes real fast and shows the website, and then it ends. They don't want to leave that out because it is a part of it. So my overall thoughts of the movie. I kind of went through it as I was going along, but I absolutely adored this movie. I think I don't like to say it because I don't like sounding pretentious or sounding hyperbolic. I think this movie is a masterpiece. This movie is everything that I would have wanted in a Batman movie and more. It had the action, it had the darkness, it had the detective stuff, it had the grittiness, it had the the cool character art for Batman over the course of the movie, or actually I'd say more for Bruce Wayne and Batman, and hit Bruce Wayne's origin story here. It had that. It had a great outfit, had great performances all the way around. The relationship between Batman and Catwoman is so good. Their chemistry is fantastic. Way better than Dark Knight Rises, and I loved it in Rises. But it's so much better here. I loved the score and the tone of the movie. The cinematography is the most beautiful Batman cinematography I've ever seen. And I love Nolan. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. And the cinematography here is unmatched. This movie is perfect. It's from start to finish. And then, like I said, it gave me everything I wanted. That's what I wanted. And more with the stuff with Batman at the end. Like I said, I've never seen it happen before where Batman's just a hero. He gets to just be a hero. And we got to see that in this movie. I never knew I wanted to see it, but now that I've seen it, it elevated this movie so much for me. This is a 10 out of 10. There's nothing that I would change about this movie, except for, like I said, if I was going to change something, it would be that little scene that I was talking about where you get that little nod to what's to come. I would change it. I don't necessarily think I would cut it out completely. I would just redo it in a different way where it's more of a wink rather than a spoonful of here's what's coming. But that's not even a negative for me. Like I said, it's more of a mixed where it's a thing where I could have done without that. All in all, this movie's a 10 out of 10. It's perfect. This movie, it's like Matt Reeves come to me personally and said, what do you want to see? I told him, and he said, okay, I'm going to give you all of that, and I'm going to surprise you with some extra stuff. And that's the movie he gave me. And I don't want it to sound like, I'm not saying that he made this for me and, discard everybody else. Obviously, he didn't. But it feels that way. This movie felt personal to me. Batman has been a huge part of my life since I was a little kid. I grew up, I said it earlier, I grew up with Batman. And to see a version of this character that is done so perfectly with so much love and care, it's a dream come true. And it's beyond anything that I could have imagined. I never could have guessed that this movie would be as good as it is. I didn't even know it was as good as it is after first watch. I watched it and was like, wow, was that really that good? It felt like a dream. I need to watch it again. So I went and watched it again. I said, wow, it really is that good, and it's better than that. It's even better than being as good as I thought it could be. It's better than being as good as I felt. It's better than that. And the more I think about it, the more I, kind of just dwell on the themes and some of the things that they built up in this movie, it gets better and better, and I want to watch it again. I want to watch it again, and the only reason I'm not watching it again is because I don't want to spend the money to go watch it again. And but I want to. And honestly, I would go right now to watch the movie all the way through again. I love this film. And some of the other things I wanted to point out, now that y'all know how I feel about this movie, it's a perfect Batman movie for me. And some of the criticisms that people have that I've heard are valid. I don't discredit anybody's criticism. I heard, I talked with one guy, he said that the Catwoman Batman stuff he felt was a little too heavy-handed. That's okay. Some people don't want to see that. I'm not that person. I thought it was fantastic, but some people don't want to see all that. They want it to be more, gritty, more action. They didn't want to see as much of the romance and the love stuff. Okay, that's fine. That's valid. If that's not your preference, that's fine. Some people wanted more action. That's fine. Some people wanted, less of the talking, less of the setup stuff. That's fine. Really, the only criticism I don't get is the thing that it's kind of something that you'll hear if you find anybody who has a negative about this movie. A lot of them say that the last 30, 40 minutes could be cut out. In my opinion, I don't think you can. It doesn't make sense. Just say when Batman, when Riddler's unmasked, they have him in custody, they find out his motivations in the movie there. To me, it doesn't make any sense. I've thought about that. I thought, oh, well, could you have done that? And I don't think there's a way to do that because for one, it doesn't close out Bruce's arc. Batman's arc just cuts off in the middle. Then Riddler's plan makes no sense. You know what? His plan was to kill Falcone. That's it. You know, it's awfully weak. You know, for a big mastermind plan, that's an awfully weak thing. That's not going to inflict much change. His plan feels complete. The movie would feel complete, and you know, it doesn't close anything out. You know, it leaves so much open if you do that. So I don't think you can. I don't. That's probably one of the least valid criticisms, in my opinion. Obviously everything's a valid. If some people didn't like it, some people, obviously that's valid. And I'm not saying that opinions are invalid, but I don't think that works. Maybe they're suggesting a different ending, and that's okay. That's fine. But to just cut it off right there, I don't think that works. I think every single frame of this movie is exactly where it needed to be, and like I said, I think it's flawless. One of the things I did want to mention is some of the setups and stuff. What do I think they were setting up? There's a few moments in this movie where, especially on second watch, when I watched it, I said, I wonder if this means that. And one of the main ones for me, and I thought it on first watch, but I wasn't sure. I was like, maybe I'm remembering something wrong. Then when I watched it again, I was like, no, that's definitely what I think. It's cool. It feels like, you know, you get the opening scene, Riddler's spine, you see the kid dressed in the Halloween costume, and he's swinging the sword around. And that is the kid that Batman connects with. I can't help but think that that's a setup for a Robin. Which one? I don't know. It would obviously be a deviation from the source material, something new, at least a little bit. But I think, you know, this is, you know, I watched it, you know, he's swinging the sword around. He's already good with the sword, and kind of, I mean, he's obviously trained with the sword, I'll say. He's swinging the sword around, and then his dad gets killed, and he connects with Batman. It felt like they were setting that up. That's probably one of the biggest ones. That's the one I'm most excited to see, because I want to see, you know, a death in the family or an Under the Red Hood type of story is probably one of the biggest adaptations that I'd like to see brought to the big screen. If I had to pick from any of the comic stories, they said, okay, out of any of these, which one do you want to see? I think Death in the Family or Under the Red Hood would be my choice. I think it's it's the story that can carry the most weight, and I would love to see it brought to the big screen, especially after seeing the care and love that went into this movie. I would love to see a version of that storyline brought to life. I'm not saying it has to be. I don't want it to be frame by frame. I don't want it to be exactly like the story beat for beat. I'd love him to do something different with it and deviate and make his own story. But to have that core emotional conflict of the Joker kills his Robin, I think that would be a great, great thing to set up. And it seemed like they were setting up a Robin here. So that's a cool one. Obviously, I mentioned the Venom serum. It's not something that I picked up on. I heard someone else mention it. And I think it's an interesting concept, setting up the Venom stuff. I've heard some people say, with the drops, and you see the drops and stuff, that this could be kind of like an introduction to Scarecrow and Dr. Crane and how, getting his fear toxin and stuff out there and as a drug and everything. What was some of the others? There was some others that I thought of. It seemed like I made a list. Maybe see if I make a list for it. Let me see. I did make a list, but I don't think it's the same thing. Okay, I don't think I did. Okay. That's all I can think of right now, but I know there's another one as far as winks and nods that feel like they were setting up something for the future or nodding towards in the future. But honestly, I don't need those things. It's just kind of cool to see. And I'm sure, new rock stars, Eric Voss will put out a video where it's a full breakdown of the Batman, and you'll see it'll bring things to light that I didn't even have any. I didn't even get close to thinking about. So that'll be cool to see when that happens. But yeah, all in all, guys, this movie more than exceeded my expectations. It made me love something more about a character that I've loved since I was a kid, something that I didn't even know that I wanted to see. They made me love that. And to me, that's something special. That's something very special. And this has been my most anticipated movie since it was Ben Affleck's movie. Back in the day when they talked about, maybe Ben Affleck might be doing a movie and it's possibly going to be him versus Deathstroke. I was excited from then. And then hearing about, then obviously you hear about Matt Reeves and then Robert Pattinson and then the little teaser at Fandom. And then, since then I've avoided everything about this movie. I didn't want to know anything. I wanted to go in completely blind. And it, my favorite thing, I heard, I've been listening to the theme song on loop, and to finally see it and not be disappointed is something so rare. I have been disappointed in most of everything that I've been excited about, and to see something that not only did it live up to my expectations, not only did it exceed my expectations, but it gave me something new to love about a character I've loved since I was a kid. And for that, there is not even a scale to measure how much I love that. So this movie easily is my favorite Batman movie. This movie easily is my favorite movie of the year, and it probably won't be beat. I will gatekeep on that one. I said it earlier. I don't like gatekeeping when it comes to movies and saying, "Oh, this thing will never be beat." This I can confidently say this movie won't be beat this year. And if it does, I invite all the other movies to beat this one, because if it goes up from here, we're in a golden age for Hollywood. But yeah, obviously this is a very polarizing movie. People have very strong feelings about it. Some, like I said, some love it, some hate it. A lot are in between. I love it. I more than love it. This movie instantly becomes special to me, and it spoke to a side of me that I didn't even know existed. And I can't wait to see what comes next out of this. They've talked about the Penguin series coming out, the GCPD series coming out. I've heard rumors about a Selena Kyle, Catwoman series coming out with Zoe Kravitz. I'm all in. I am all in. This movie sold me on this universe. I so hope that they continue on what they started here and they build from it and they don't follow up with something lackluster. I hope Warner Brothers, please, Warner Brothers, if anybody from Warner Brothers is listening to this right now, which I doubt you are, but if you are, please let this universe breathe. Don't force anything onto Matt Reeves with this. Don't mandate things. Don't change things. Don't force him. Don't say, hey, don't Spider-Man 3 it and say, hey, we have to have Venom. Don't say we need the Joker in this next movie. We have to have the Joker. Put him in there no matter what. Don't mandate him and say under 2 hours or 2 hours and under. Can't exceed 2 hours. Don't do that to him. Let this universe breathe. Let Matt Reeves do his thing. Matt Reeves and company, keep it up. Take what you did here, learn from what you did here, and say, okay, we built something special here. Let's build something special again. If Matt Reeves and company can pull that off, and Warner Brothers can let them do it, guys, this is gonna be amazing. And I know some people aren't in for the ride. Some people aren't sold on this universe. And for those people, I truly, truly do feel sorry for those people, because this is an amazing, amazing time to be a Batman fan. And I'm so, so excited to see what comes next. I'm not saying you're invalid. I don't want it to sound like I'm saying you're invalid if you didn't like it. Obviously, that's perfectly fine. But I do wish everybody, all Batman fans, could love this and go, we need more. Obviously, that's never going to happen. But I would love to see that. And I would love to see it happen with this. Obviously, Snyder people who want the Batfleck movie, I'm with you. I would love to see Batfleck's movie. But if it comes with, if they told me today, we could either continue Matt Reeves' universe or we could scrap it and do Batfleck, which one? I'm siding with Matt Reeves, guys. What he built here is something so special to me that as much as I'd love to see, Batfleck continue, if it came down to choosing one or the other, I can't turn my back on Reeves now. I'm all in. And so this has been a fun stream. I love this. I love this subject. I love this movie. I love this talk. I love breaking down a plot like this and just talking in depth. This is my first time I've really actually done this. I tried to do it with No Way Home, but I was a little too disorganized and I didn't really, stay on topic like I wanted to. So this is the first time I really get to do it, and I really enjoy this. So this is going to be something I definitely continue for things that I enjoy, for movies that I love, that I feel warrant this. And so everybody watching, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch, be sure to follow. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Comment down below. Tell me, I want to know what y'all's favorite Batman movies are, especially if you're on YouTube. Obviously, you're going to have comments still to go even after this live ends. Let me know, who's your favorite Batman actor? What's your favorite Batman movie? And if this, if you loved this movie like I did, what's your favorite moment? If you hated this movie or didn't like this movie or were disappointed, what's your least favorite moment? I want to hear all of it. Let me know down in the comments. Obviously, like, subscribe, follow, do all the above. Twitter, to my Twitter people or to the other people watching, Twitter is the place where I do all my channel updates. It's where I let people know. It's where, what I had earlier, I showed my letterboxed ranking of the Batman movies. If you're interested in that, I posted it on my Twitter. Definitely go check that out. And guys, just have a great night. And let's keep this energy. Let's keep this energy. I love what's happening, and let's hope it stays that way. All right, guys. There's no outro on this one, so I'm just gonna go ahead. I'm gonna sign off. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. And we will be back on here Monday. All right, everybody. Y'all take care.